the staff review meeting for the Murray City Planning Commission. It is 6 p.m. on Thursday, May 20th, 2021. And present are Commissioners Jake Pearson, Travis Nate, Lisa Malkiewicz. I'm Marion Patterson. And joining us on Zoom is Sue Wilson and Ned Hacker. Jeremy Lowry is excused for this meeting. And from staff, we have Jared Hall and Zachary Smallwood and Susan Nixon. So we will start with our business items. Approval of minutes. We had minutes from the May 6th meeting. And I'm sure everyone, there was a lot to review, a lot of public comments. Did anyone had any comments, changes, corrections? I just noticed one, and I could be totally wrong about this, but Preston Andrews and Charlie Laidlaw, their emails were exactly the same.
Yes.
They sent the exact same email.
Exactly.
Okay. Just they're very specific. So it seemed like maybe they weren't the exact same email, but okay. Just making sure. When I read it, I was like, hold on, I just read that. So, okay. Any other?
Did you turn it on?
Oh.
Uh-oh.
Be just fine with it. Wait.
Oh, yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, I hear it. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Which might be just fine. I found two small, tiny spelling errors. I don't know if they're important or not. Page 11, the first paragraph down at the bottom of the paragraph, the third sentence up. It says, make no mistake, this begins four lines up. Make no mistake, this will be a significant increase in traffic for Walden residents. Most will go through the Hollow Springs and less going to Midville, and I love off that road. I think it was Live.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Probably is. Those were put in directly from the emails as
So they,
I
Oh,
didn't feel like we should change anything that they wrote, whether they were grammatical or spelling errors.
that makes sense.
okay.
For the record.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Who was it under, though? Just
I don't know. That's why I read it. Oh, wait. Dan
Zini.
Azzini,
Yeah, another.
page
His
11.
might have been a live comment.
I think his
His
was
was live.
live.
I think you're right. Yeah, because, yeah, his address
So,
isn't
We
there.
can correct that in the live comment.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Otherwise, they looked really, they were good.
I think there was one other small spelling error, but I can't find it at the moment. I'll tell you. So I find it.
All right. Conflict of interest. Any of the commissioners have a conflict with any of the agenda items tonight? All right. And
No.
then there was no findings of fact for this packet. So agenda item number 4.
That would be me. So as you know, this one was continued from the April 15th meeting. And because the applicants were not present, they will be here tonight. So I did not update the staff report. I just included their cover letter explaining their intentions and their desires. And that's really all for that one, unless have you had any specific questions. Or you can wait. Travis.
Okay, I'll save it for the main thing, but I just want to clarify before we go in. Even though the landscaping is not landscaping, it is rocks piled on top of asphalt, there is absolutely nothing we can do about that because it's internal to the site. That's what I read in the minutes.
Yeah, that's essentially correct. It's not that there are landscaping standards for parking lots that we could apply that we have not applied. Landscaping within every 70 parking spaces within 75 feet of landscaping. Sorry. That we have not applied to interior parking lots of that scale for inventory like this. We could. We have not. So we did.
Let's talk about that in a bit.
Okay. Right. So.
Yeah, let's talk about that when we get to it.
Sorry, I just want to make sure all the commissioners here.
And their desire is to have a perpetual CUP approved rather than.
Which is why I want to talk about this.
Rather than
This
the
is
2-year.
year 5, right? We're for this renewal, or is it year 4?
They've completed 3.
They've completed 3, so
Yeah.
this would take us through year. Okay.
Yeah. So
And I'm in the meeting, I'm sure is when we'll have more discussion, but I just want to ask if I'm out of line before I ask in the big meeting. I find it concerning that tax revenue is listed as one of the benefits to why they should be given this parking lot. I don't know. Is it tax? They're making more money really affect our tax revenues to that extent? And is it really a legitimate thing to consider?
Well, the dealerships are definitely critical to the city's tax base, no doubt. Whether or not it's pertinent to this particular application, I guess you could talk about that, discuss that, decide whether it is or isn't. But yes, they are critical to Murray's tax base, no doubt. So,
And Sue, did you have your hand raised?
Yes, I do. I don't know how this is going to work for me if I have questions. Do I just do that, push, raise my hand?
You can raise your hand or you can just interject. We can hear you in the council chambers, so.
Okay. One of my questions on this application, are we going to specify the number of stalls? Because in their letter, in some of our documents, it talks about 300, and in other places it talks about 196, and another place 200. And I know we've got the one sheet in here that has 196 circled on it. So are we going to put that in the conditions?
yes, that actually was the recommendation from staff, since that's all they've allotted, and they've designated specifically 196 stalls. So it's pretty hard to have 300 when you've only got 196. So
Okay.
yes, that's what, and they are in agreement with that. I think it kind of just initially they were guesstimating how many they would have, and then the mall drew this section of the parking lot, and it turned out to be 196, and that's kind of what they've been using. So
And I've driven over there multiple times, and they never have anywhere close to that in inventory. But
true, I would agree.
So if their ideal situation is to have a continual use, but we've put as condition number 6, is that staff's recommendation? You feel like a 2-year
I did not change it
or
based on, but
is
based on
staff open to a perpetual use?
that is
conditional?
absolutely open to planning commission. Yes, if you
Okay.
Because I think initially we thought it was a temporary. That was the impression we as staff and you as the commission thought.
That's definitely
Yeah.
how they presented it.
Yes, and based on talking with Mr. Flint from the Larry Miller Group, they would not like it to be temporary. They would like it to be continual, with the exceptions of the months of November and December.
Okay.
So,
And I think that'll be part of the discussion.
Right. I just was wondering the fact that you mentioned that, but it was still conditioned. I was just curious.
yeah, I just didn't change it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. Any other questions about that one? Okay. Let's move on to agenda item number 5, 3 Swords Forge.
Yeah, so this is just a request from Brent Bateman to operate a fabricated metal business. They want, this is on behalf of his client. They make decorative swords and knives. And from what I understand, it's mostly personal use. It's not like a large retail type thing. So it's just very basic. It's a conditional use in the MG zone. So we have to bring it before you guys. And yeah, any questions or comments or on that one?
Yeah. Again, a little typo. I don't know if it matters. Page 5, City Department review. It just says Planning Division circulated the proposed vehicle sales business to multiple Murray.
Of course we did. Okay, yeah, just a little
Easy
typo in
correction,
there.
yeah.
Thank you for pointing that out though, so I can make sure not to do that on the next one.
Okay. Any other questions about that? Agenda items 6 and 7, Bamberg Place subdivision. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is 2 applications, conditional use for the residential infill, and then a subdivision preliminary and final review and hopeful approval. You saw this property a couple months ago for the zone change. City Council approved the zone change. So Mr. Prince has come back with his residential infill and subdivision request for 7 lots plus a parcel, which would be an open space pocket park. And he has requested to utilize the residential infill standards, which is section 1756, that does allow for variations for the public right-of-way, specifically the road, sidewalks, park strip, etc. And I'll say he definitely was creative with this. Boy, this property, I can't tell you how many people looked at this property and just could not make it work. So he is proposing to have the 42-foot right-of-way as opposed to the typical 49 feet. Eliminate the park strip, 6-foot sidewalks, 2.5 feet curb and gutter. The lots do meet all the lot width and area. And in the residential infill, it does allow for a lesser front setback of 20 feet as opposed to the typical 25. So, yeah, that's basically it. Any questions? Oh, the one parcel that was originally, as part of the adjacent property owner to the east, they will have a drainage easement from the subdivision that will drain into that property that will be maintained by the property owner, but the HOA will pay for that and also pay for maintenance for the pocket park. So you have copies of the CC&Rs that cover that information too. So.
Any questions about this application?
The first time this came before us, having multiple people involved in that piece of property made me a little nervous, but all legal and it will maintain.
He has all the deeds in order. I think some of them have already possibly exchanged hands. He could probably answer that for sure, but everybody was in agreement. He had the deeds and everything drawn up and just waiting for the approval so he can start digging.
I guess part of the reason I asked that question is
And yes, they would have to have that all resolved before the plat could be recorded. We would have to verify that. Otherwise, we can't record the plat.
I guess part of the reason I asked that is because you're the expert and you'll understand if it's doable
Yes,
long-term.
it is.
And I
Yep.
don't. Yeah.
So the residential infill, I know, I guess just maybe explain, I know we don't do private roads.
Right. The
Mainly
resident,
because they're more narrow, right? They don't have to meet is that the idea about private roads?
right. We don't allow private roads anymore. A public road has a 40-foot right-of-way. But because of Murray has some smaller parcels of property, remnants that are more difficult to develop, we came up with this residential infill additional requirements a couple of 7 or 8 years ago.
Longer than that.
Longer than that. It hasn't been used very often, though.
Probably 8 or 9 years ago.
8 or 9 years ago. Yeah.
And what it does basically is let you shorten that front yard and basically eliminate the park strip on the road. So you don't lose any road asphalt width.
Okay.
You eliminate the park strip and put a 6-foot sidewalk adjacent to the curb.
I saw no park strips. Yeah, I was just curious. So yeah, it's the same width of the road, which is why we don't do private roads because they were making it smaller, right?
Yes, to an extent, but to make sure that not to be too ornery about the way you say that. It's not that we don't do private roads. That's
Okay.
an oversimplification. We do not subdivide residential lots on private roads, on anything
Right.
but publicly dedicated rights of way. We do townhomes and things in condo flats on private access ways, et cetera. We do
Right.
private ways, but not subdivided.
Single family lots,
Yeah.
right? Which for a time they were doing.
Yeah, they
Right.
used to do, we don't anymore. And the RIO, like Susan said, at the time they eliminated those, they introduced this residential infill to try to kind of balance that out a little bit at least and make it easier to do some infill subdivision.
Got
But
it.
it doesn't
Yeah.
modify a lot. It's
Right,
pretty
right. It does, yeah. It lessens the width of the right-of-way and shorter front yards.
Got
That's
it.
really about it. But it does require the sign-off from the city engineer. He's got to be okay with the road that they're proposing to do and the improvements. So
Okay.
it wouldn't get this far if it hadn't have passed his okay, and well, and the planning also. So
Well, it sounds like it's a good compromise too.
Yeah.
between those.
it is, and it's just, it makes it, some of these properties, and they have to be less than 2 acres. So it does make it possible for these little smaller pieces to be developed. Otherwise, they wouldn't, probably. So,
Yeah, you can't use it on large, you can't
Yeah.
use it on a 45 lot subdivision.
Yeah.
It's only for smaller
less than 2 acres.
nooks and crannies that are harder to subdivide.
Yeah. So over 2 acres, you could have a PUD and kind of do similarly, but for less than 2 acres, you can
Yeah.
use this. And PUDs have the 2 acre minimum. And
Okay. Any other questions about that one? All right. Agenda item number 8, the 3-lot commercial subdivision for Murray Square.
Yeah, so this one is, you guys probably remember it as Winkle Crossing. This is all they're really doing is coming in and subdividing the property. Nothing is really changing about the project. They want to be able to actively work towards getting commercial tenants. And some commercial tenants like to have their own property. So being able to subdivide this out allows for different ownerships and things like that. So that's really the request at this point. I will state that the memorandum of understanding that was approved by the city council limits the density and all that. So somebody couldn't come in and purchase the commercial side and then request to put more additional residential or anything like that within that. It's all governed by that memorandum of understanding that was approved as part of the development. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Can you correct me? So is the commercial in the pedestal of the buildings, or is it going to be standalone commercial?
It's standalone commercial.
Okay, so it's right along the 9th East frontage.
Yeah, so it's what we call horizontal mixed use.
Sure.
So it's still mixed use project. It's just separated. It's not vertically mixed. It's horizontally mixed.
Can I ask one more question to piggyback that? I remember that the first floor was going to be commercial in addition to separate buildings. Is that no longer?
One, I didn't want to jump in because I jump in all the time and it's so obnoxious.
Yeah, Jared.
The building on, so you've got the main lot, the commercial lot, and then there's the access way that comes out of, I'm just gonna
Ivory
say Murray
Place.
Creek because that's what I always call it. It comes out of Murray Creek and goes to 9th East. And then there's the lot on the other side. The residential building on that lot has commercial on the main floor up along 9th East. So it's got both aspects.
Okay.
So that's what you're remembering.
Yes.
Good memory.
That's what I'm remembering actually as well. But
Excellent.
Yeah, so there will be a little bit of vertical mixed use, but largely it's horizontal
Most
within those two. Yeah.
and in theory, we could see this third lot get subdivided again and again.
You
into smaller pads
could
if they
possibly
wanted
see
to.
that. Like,
Okay.
for example, Chick-fil-A likes to own their own property.
Right.
So I'm not saying Chick-fil-A is going in there. No. I'm not saying that.
The memorandum, the MOU, I'm just going to say MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. How long is that in effect? Meaning if the economy changes and they sell plot 1 and they do put Chick-fil-A in and then they build the apartments and then the next little lot stays for a long time and 12 years from now, someone comes in and decides they want to put condos there.
Great question.
Yeah, and I think if I remember correctly, all that has to be developed within 5 years. So they have a 5-year time frame to develop that commercial portion. And do we not allow the last building as well?
We don't allow the last residential units.
Building
until
B.
that commercial's all done.
Yeah.
So
And then just because I want to understand, let's say the economy tanks and they don't finish the project and 6 years from now, then what are their options? They're still required to build 12 years from now, they're still required, even though they've passed that 5-year.
if the economy tanked and the terms, the year terms of the MOU ran out,
Sorry.
they'd have to come back and renegotiate the terms for years with the city. That's the value of the MOU. It applies to everyone it applies to this city and the future council, and it applies to the owners of the project right now and anybody who's going to own property in it. So it has to get renegotiated. So as far as how long does the MOU in effect? Forever. It's effectively the zoning on that property now, that memorandum of understanding.
Excellent. That's what I was trying to understand with the project aside,
Yeah.
what we're deciding for the future of this property.
Yep. If they wanted to do a different project, they would have to renegotiate the whole memorandum and basically, in essence, renegotiate the zoning. And their permits have been let on the first 300 apartment units and just barely actually, not too long ago. So, but they're getting ready to get under construction. So none of that's going to happen. And they've got a couple of prospective tenants already for the commercial stuff on 9th East. That's the reason for the subdivision now. It's all moving. You're going to see this one sooner than later. So,
Can I ask a follow-up question
Sure.
to that? So 20 years from now, I go to purchase this commercial property. How am I notified that there's this memorandum of understanding?
good
Is that-
question. It's recorded against the property, so you get it with your title work.
Okay.
So you know that for example, if you're one of the commercial pad owners and you want to try to close the access because you don't like skateboarding kids. I'm making up stuff from the hip here, so work with me. You don't like that. In the memorandum, it dictates that access stays open to 9th East from all the way back to the neighborhood that it has been serving for years. So you can't interfere with that under that memorandum of understanding.
Okay, thank you.
And the skateboarders prevail.
Yes, as always.
Okay, any other questions for Murray Crossing? Is that what it's called now?
Murray Square.
Murray Square.
Split the difference. But
Not Winkle Crossing.
We do it all the time.
Okay, so agenda item 9 and 10 are a conditional use permit amendment and a subdivision amendment.
Yes, so this one, Planning Commission approved back in March and December, March of last year. And the plat has not been recorded. I believe my staff report said that it has. It has not been. So we haven't recorded it yet. Still will do. So it was subdivided into 15 lots. This is a PUD, unlike the infill one. So the PUD does allow for clustering of lots and property. And typically that is to preserve steep slopes, wetlands, etc. And this property has a lot of those. So Planning Commission granted approval. After they received approval, and recently the designer and development owner, Garbett Homes, when they were plotting out all the homes, discovered that lots 4 and 5, due to those steep drop-offs at the east side of the property, the home plans that they had designed, which is all part of the PUD to match the materials and the building style architecture, that the homes that they had designed for that were not going to quite fit the setbacks that were approved by the Planning Commission. So part of the PUD, Planning Commission has the ability to modify setbacks. Based on that, Lot 4, they are asking for a 15-foot rear yard setback, and Lot 5, a 10-foot rear yard setback. The 10-foot is measured from the deck. So, but in theory, that setbacks really is insignificant because it is a long ways from the actual property because of the wetlands, and there's nobody or not another home within 75 plus feet. So it doesn't affect or impact anyone else. But in order for them to record the plat, they had to come back and ask for that modification. So, and you all got copies of the elevations showing basically the design and why they were asking.
I've never heard of a double basement before. That was a new one.
Well, that was kind of a term. I don't know if we made that up or what, but our code doesn't allow it. So, yeah. Anyway, any other questions?
I have a question. Sorry. Have I met my limit? Conditional use permit application that the applicant for this item submitted said they requested a change for the rear yard setback for lot 4, 15. No, I misread it. It's 15 feet. Lot 5, 10 feet. Thank you. I figured it out.
Lots 4 and 5. Yep.
Got it.
Good answer. Good answer.
Good answer.
You did it.
Right.
Any other questions for this application? Okay, and then our last agenda item, the master transportation plan.
And so this has been in the works for a number of months, and I'm just going to quickly kind of outline for you again, like like we said in the memo, how this is going. It's not a plan that's going to be added to our general plan. It's not going to modify Title 17, which is kind of the world that you guys inhabit, but the City Council is going to be asked to adopt it by resolution as a standalone plan. And Public Works, who's been working on this with the Engineering Division and with Avenue Consultants, wanted to get a Planning Commission recommendation for the City Council's benefit. So they wanted to show the plan to you and explain it to you tonight. Thomas McMurdy from Avenue is online to do that, and Trey and Chris from the Engineering Division are here to answer questions too, if you have those. So have a good presentation about it, and we'll let them do that. I guess we're going to make them all sit on Zoom through the majority of the meeting with their video screens off, playing Pac-Man or whatever while they wait through the other stuff that we do. But did you have any questions in the few minutes that we have about that plan, or one's for me?
I just had one question on phase 3. I noticed that there's nothing striped for hoverboards.
Yeah.
in phase 3 for 2050.
Everybody gave up waiting on hoverboards a few years ago.
Dang
I
it.
have them
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
Would you want to discuss Galleria apartments at all?
No, not
Okay.
really.
I just
No,
that was the little nugget of gold in this.
that's in there
I-
and looming
Yeah,
large.
I think we better discuss that just a second.
It'll be looming large in everything that we do for the next. I'm going to say 3 years. The Galleria is a lot of property in the mixed use zone. It can add a lot of traffic. It can add a lot of units. It has the potential to do a lot. And we have no idea exactly what it will do. We don't have applications for it. We've seen some concepts on it and shared those and its potential with the consultants, and that changes kind of how we view 700 West, how we view Murray Boulevard. That in addition to Security National building out at about 1 million square feet of office, that puts traffic on the roads. So yeah, 700 West is a problem area in that stretch of it. So it's going to be a big discussion, you bet. And you're going to be hearing more about that as we go forward. So
Has that property been sold, Jared?
no, it's still owned. It's still owned by the brands. But it is.
Jared, I
up
have
for
a
sale.
question on this one.
Yeah.
This is Ned.
Yep.
Is the motion desired on this to make a recommendation that the city council adopt it?
Yes. We would seek a motion to recommend the city council that they adopt this plan by resolution. Yes.
I guess one other comment I'll make on it was on page 15 when we're looking at the job densities in Murray.
Uh-huh.
There seems to be a lot of correlation to where we've had some proposed mixed-use developments. It's just a general
Yeah,
observation.
it's a good observation.
And does that support the mixed use area?
It just
Or-
says it's an area that there's jobs and we need
Yeah.
to consider.
Yep, and that's very in a lot of ways. This ties into, and it's a good point to make in the last couple minutes that we have. This master transportation plan does not supplant or change anything about the general plan's transportation element. We have the transportation element of the general plan, and they should basically be in harmony. We deal a lot more with access to active transportation and stuff like that in the general plan's element. But yeah, it does call out things like that employment density, and it does coincide nicely with where we've got mixed use projects.
But really, at the end of the day, this is helping project budgets for the next 30
Yes.
years or so.
It's identifying critical infrastructure improvements in essence, and trying to see how those fit into the overall scheme of transportation in the city.
Great.
Okay,
I like it.
great.
Good
Thank you.
job.
All right. Well, then we will adjourn our pre-meeting until 6:30, our actual meeting.
Susan, had
We good? Okay, I will call to order the Murray City Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, May 20th, 2021. It is 6:30 p.m. Present this evening are Commissioners Jake Pearson, Travis Ney, Lisa Malkiewicz, and I am Maren Patterson. And joining us on Zoom, we have Ned Hacker and Sue Wilson. Tonight, Jeremy Lowry is excused from our meeting. And from staff, we have Jared Hall and Zachary Smallwood, Susan Nixon, and Brian Farnsworth are here with us. As the chair of the Murray City Planning Commission, I, Maren Patterson, have determined that due to infectious disease COVID-19 novel coronavirus, holding an in-person meeting with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those in attendance. Under these circumstances, Utah Code 52-4-2074 allows for electronic meetings to be held without an anchor location, so long as the public has had an opportunity to view the meeting and submit public comments. We are holding tonight's Planning Commission meeting via video conference, and the meeting is being live streamed at www.murraycitylive.com. If you have a public comment to submit for the Planning Commission, please do so via email at planningcommission@murray.utah.gov. So we will begin our agenda items with our business items, and the first item is approval of the minutes from our May 6th meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review those minutes?
yes.
Yes.
There weren't any
Yes.
changes in the pre-meeting. So I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from the May 6, 2021 as submitted.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? Then those meeting minutes are approved. Motion passes. Agenda item number 2 is conflict of interest. Do any of the commissioners have a conflict with any of the agenda items this evening?
No.
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 Neither do I. Then we will move to item number 3, which is approval of findings of fact. We did not have a finding of fact for this meeting, this packet, so we'll move on to our conditional use permits. Agenda item number 4, Fashion Place Mall and Larry Miller Auto Group requesting a conditional use permit to allow the storage of vehicles and employee parking at the Fashion Place Mall Overflow parking lot located at 6011 South State Street. And I think the applicant is here. Great. So we'll have our staff report by Susan Nixon.
Thank you. This application is for conditional use for auto storage in our commercial zone on behalf of Fashion Place Mall and the Larry Miller Real Estate Group. This item was continued from the April 15th Planning Commission meeting as the applicant was not present and the Planning Commission wanted to discuss the agenda item with them. The property is located in the CD commercial zone and auto storage is allowed. Auto storage land use 4600 is allowed under with conditional use permit approval. The Planning Commission approved originally a conditional use in 2018 for 1 year with the impression that it was for a temporary situation. The applicants reapplied in 2019 for additional conditional use, and the Planning Commission granted a 2-year conditional use approval. So that has lapsed, will lapse at the end of this month in May. The applicant has met all the conditions of approval previously and has maintained a business license for the property. The applicant is desirous to have a continuing perpetual approval for the conditional use, even though the staff report indicated 2 years. I think their intent is to have a continual one, with the exceptions of the month of November and December. As shown on the property, the application is for 196 parking stalls. The parking lot has an excess of 600 parking stalls, and they've delineated the 196. Go to the next one. So staff is recommending approval, and the Planning Commission does have the option of granting the 2 years or more. You can discuss that with the applicant. So we are recommending approval for the vehicle storage and employee parking at 6011 South State, subject to the six conditions as outlined.
Okay, great. Any questions for staff? Okay, great. Then let's.
Maren, maybe can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I'm not sure when it's appropriate to ask this. So, when this came to us prior to the 2-year, there was discussion about, so prior to this application, we had some concern about the number of used car dealerships in Murray. And it seemed in multiple different occasions, it seemed like we had a large number of used car dealerships in Murray and dealerships. And then this applicant came to us and we thought it was a temporary situation. We approved it. And now it's looking like it's more of a permanent situation. But when the temporary was approved, there was some discussion about, is this encroaching? Is this auto sales encroaching throughout the city? And are we concerned about that? And I think we all established that it wasn't at the time, but it might be worthy of discussion again.
Good point, and the Planning Commission can discuss that. There's actually 2 ways of looking at this. There's a conditional use based on the Land Use Code 4600, which is automobile storage. So that's what they've applied for. But then there's also the other way of looking at it, where auto dealerships and any commercial use in Murray does require that they have adequate parking for the use associated with the property. So, but they have applied for the automobile storage, whether they temporary or not, and also until the mall is in need of the parking lot overflow, it does benefit the mall with the extra income for them and really does not impact the surrounding businesses in any way.
Well, I think, Lisa, too, my memory of that is that it was not these kind of used car dealerships. It was the really small, tiny offices selling 1 or 2 cars. How do they have inventory for it? They don't have enough parking, that we were seeing a lot of applications for, in a business park, they would run out an office and try and sell used vehicles out of that office. And so then that presents, I think, different problems than a dealership that's, been there for a long time.
No, this is just overflow parking.
That's my memory of some of those used auto sales, applications that we were seeing.
Less than an acre, less than a half acre.
Yeah,
Gordon properties.
selling
come to
5
mind.
cars or something like that. Yeah.
And to be honest, I don't know which side I support in that discussion. I'm not sure. On the surface, it doesn't seem like an issue. It's a parking lot that exists. It's a parking lot that's empty. Now someone can make a little bit of money off of using the parking lot. It's intended for cars. On the surface, I don't see an issue, but I think it's worthy of some discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I would assume too, if we don't approve this, they're going to still put the car somewhere.
Well, is that appropriate?
Well, they store cars at the airport, and that's for dealerships all over the valley.
Yeah,
So I think we'll just be inconvenient.
They also have, I think, a little used piece of property just south of the high school that is where they park a lot of their commercial vehicles. And of course, they're for some of the other dealerships. But at the end of the day, it's still the same Larry H. Miller Auto Group that owns that property. And that parking lot is rarely near capacity.
And the reason I also bring up the discussion is because in the past there was discussion about them developing a parking garage or something. Then they came back and said it wasn't cost effective for them, which makes me scratch my head a little bit because we keep allowing them.
Yeah, I think that's a good question to ask the applicant as well.
I think that one you were just referring to was right on State Street, and they kind of withdrew their
It was the
application.
Big Dog Pond property.
Yeah, yes. And they had a lot of cost for the improvements, and they decided not to and withdrew their application for that one. But to answer your original question, if the Planning Commission has concerns about smaller dealerships, the acre, half acre type properties, we are open to research and come up with some kind of a draft to modify our code. If you wanted to give us some guidance on that, it's probably worth discussing, at least pursuing, because it's been thrown around for numerous years. I know that. So
I was going to say, I really appreciate that statement because I feel like for years and years it's been thrown around but never really addressed.
Yeah.
And Zach has spare time.
We've started to address it a number of times, not to go too long into this one, but it's on the list, it's definitely, and if I can articulate what we kind of, I promised Zach I wouldn't talk.
It's okay.
I'm allowed. One of the things that we were concerned about in all those discussions with the Planning Commission about that potential ordinance change and these kind of inventory lots was opportunity cost. So when they're taking up spaces, a tiny space in a business park strip or whatever, there's a kind of an opportunity cost that other businesses can't come in. This is in our view, an inventory lot is always going to be necessary for big dealerships like Larry H. Miller and those that we have. And this is a big empty parking lot 9 months out of the year that Fashion Place has and can use it the other 2 months. So if it works for all of them, we don't have any opportunity cost, land use wise, with this particular kind of lot. But the little lots that were, those that were concerning us back then, that's mainly what it was. They're taking up space all over the place. And maybe that's not the greatest or highest or best use for those properties. And if we don't have a way to actively discourage them to larger properties so it's a bigger operation or to other parts of the city, and I think part of the conversation back then too was, do we really want to let this encroach, this kind of use, vehicle sales, little vehicle sales, start encroaching east of State Street too, not just in the industrial parks on the north end of the city, et cetera, where they had been, but into every single empty unit. And for a couple of years, that was a really heavy request. It's tapered off, to be honest. But still, it's still a question we need to ask ourselves, and we'll happily take it up.
Great. Any other questions for staff before we? All right, then we'll have the applicant. Do you need them to raise their hand?
I know who it is.
Okay, great. Then we'll have them state their name and address for the record. when they're unmuted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So Mark Thorson, 14057 New Settle Road, Draper, Utah, representing Fashion Place LLC.
Great. Thank you for being here. Have you had an opportunity to review the 6 conditions for this conditional
Yes, I
use
have.
permit? And will you be able to comply with those?
Yes.
Great. Is there any additional information that you would like to give us regarding this request?
No, I think staff covered it pretty well.
Okay, wonderful. Then I will now open this, open a public meeting for this item. If there is anyone that would like to make a public comment regarding this agenda item, they can do so by emailing the Planning Commission at murray.utah.gov. Or if we had, did we have anyone register to speak?
The other applicant, Mr. Greg Flint,
Oh.
represented the Larry Miller Group. I believe he would like to.
Yes, yes, of course.
too,
Great.
so.
And Mr. Flint, you're unmuted, so you're allowed to speak at this point.
Hey, good evening, Planning Commission. Thank you for taking a few minutes. We just appreciate you hearing us out, and hopefully you're able to read, I guess, the memo we prepared, and hopefully that answered a bunch of the questions that have been asked. We're happy to answer any more. And I think just in addition to kind of what Susan addressed at the beginning of the call, is that obviously we come back a few times, and I think one of the requests is just that I think it's number 6, possibly extending that as it is a conditional use there, and I guess more in a perpetual manner. So happy to answer any questions wherever we can, and thank you for your time this evening.
Great, thank you. Yes, we did get your cover letter, and we're able to read over that as part of our packet. And did the commission have any questions for the applicant at this point, or do you want to take some public comment and we can have him address those things?
Maybe after public comment.
Okay, let's open the meeting then for public comment. Did we have anyone register to speak? Okay, so we will just, if anyone wants to submit a public comment through the email, again, that's planningcommission@murray.utah.gov, and we will just give a minute to have any of those submitted. Any emails coming in?
No, we don't have it.
Okay, then I will close the public comment period and open it for discussions and questions from the commission.
I just have one question. So it sounds like the applicant wants a perpetual, this to be in perpetuity. So is that something we would do? I mean, would we modify this so instead of a 2-year time period, would we do
The Planning Commission could do that. Yes, you do have authority to do that. And typically conditional uses run with the property and are perpetual. So I think this just originally came under with the pretense that it was a temporary situation.
Okay.
So
But I'd appreciate a little more discussion on that. You know, on what are the pros and cons of that? And if we were to, would we approve a conditional use permit for leasing to Larry H. Miller only, or for any cars that wanted to park on there? Or what would it be?
Well, I think it's a separate contract. I think it would be a separate application even, wouldn't it? No, not necessarily. But Larry H. Miller has contracted for a set amount of parking spaces, and the property owner has to give them that. So if they wanted to do some other private contract outside of that, they could use up some of that space or apply for a new conditional use to use additional parking, correct?
yes.
So if we approve the conditional use for vehicle storage, in theory, any dealership could store vehicles there if they contracted with the property owner.
Right. So,
Forever if we did
They
that.
abided by the conditions
Yeah.
of your approval.
so if we took the time restraint off, anyone could come through and say, I want to store cars here.
Well, I think that the contract is with the Millers and Fashion Place Mall, so I would think that the Millers would have some say in that too. Is that what you're asking? Because it's for 196 stalls for the Larry Miller Group.
That's not necessarily laid out in the conditions.
I think it's unclear.
Yeah. That there would be 196 stalls.
I would probably make that.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. I think we should add a condition that delineates 196 stalls, especially if we are going to consider not doing a 2-year period and doing a, perpetual long-term.
And I do think if we take the time frame off, it becomes a little gray. If someone else comes to us in 6 years, I don't know, let's say the name of another dealer. I don't know. Nissan come to them in 6 years and says, we want to store cars there. I don't know. I think in 10 years from now, it'd be very gray. Because right now, it's a deal just between Larry H. Miller and the owner.
What part would be great, because they would be approaching Fashion Place and approving and coming to us for a conditional use permit for however many stalls they wanted to use on the mall site, right? Like the mall site has like 600 spots.
I guess what I mean by gray is, let's say if I'm not a big dealer like Toyota or Nissan or Larry H. Miller or somebody, and let's say I'm a small contractor in the Gordon area and I have 4 cars on my little CUP, and now I want to put 200, I don't know, 196, making up stuff here, right? But could anyone come?
But they would then be in violation of this conditional use permit. So it's we're not allowing unlimited parking on this spot.
No, if they still stay within the 196, whatever. But then anyone that is selling like used cars or new cars or.
This is not a sales lot. Again,
Yeah,
just to
yeah.
re-clarify, this is an inventory lot. So you're, even under this conditional use for 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, whatever, no one is authorized to sell cars or display cars for sale on this lot.
Okay, so condition number 5.
If
covers
somebody's
all-
apply to
parking in any of those stalls that isn't part of this conditional use permit, then they can be reported, right?
They're not part of it either.
yeah.
So
they
I guess
would
then condition number 5 does say property for inventory vehicles,
Right.
okay?
Inventory only.
and employee parking.
And the conditional use is blind, really, to the contract. I'm just going to say that up front. If Larry H. Miller bows out of this and Fashion Place wants to work the same kind of deal with Tim Dolly, they could do that. And that doesn't, as long as they abide by the same conditions that you have given, you're not supposed to care whether it's Larry Miller's cars or Tim Dolly's there.
Yeah.
So it would,
Right.
we wouldn't
It's-
bring that back unless they
which I
wanted to
think is
change
why it's
something.
important to delineate exactly how many spaces they would
That's
be.
a good
The spaces and the use, that it's inventory only, not sales. Yeah.
As far as the city's concerned, what's the negative for extending it forever? I don't see a negative, but maybe I'm missing it.
It's land that isn't used in a meaningful way. And you're not going to have someone try to open up a Quickie Mart in the back there because no one knows it's there. So it is wasted space right now in the big scheme of things. Can I ask a few questions? And since I've always had a few questions on this particular application. Have we done a landscape survey for the entire site since the Shake Shack has been put in and the Taco Bell has been done? Is the entire site still in compliance with landscaping as we call out?
For the mall itself, not the soft site.
Well, so is this considered part of the mall property? I think that was the argument once upon a time, that this was part of the mall property.
It is, but we view it just a little different as far as the landscaping because there is no frontage. Where Fashion Place Mall is completely, there is frontage on all 4 sides of it, basically. So we treat that a little differently because there is frontage. We do have codes specifically for landscaping in the frontage setback area.
So my biggest concern with allowing this to go on into perpetuity is that I really feel like, in bullet point number 5 of the letter submitted to us, they say that they have met all previous conditions set forth in the conditional use permit. And really, I think they haven't met the spirit of the conditions set out. The spirit of the conditions when we originally put conditions on were that they would landscape the interior of this property. What they've done is they have laid down rocks over the top of asphalt, pretended to plant some plants that died within a couple of months, had to be removed the last time, and now we're still just stuck with rocks on top of a parking lot. If we're going to go and say, we want you to be able to use this into perpetuity, all other conditional use permits are required to bring the site into complete standards. And I believe that we should hold them accountable. If you want to use this into perpetuity, which I'm fine with, I want the site brought into compliance.
I have a question about that. So I looked at the pictures of the landscaping, and I'm assuming they did what they did because they are not watering that property.
That is exactly correct.
And my question is, should we be requiring them to water that property, or should we be okay with them since nobody sees it? Should we require extra water to be used for plants that nobody will see?
It's an opportunity to address the heat island that parking lot creates.
If I could add, it would technically fall underneath a code of our landscaping code requires that parking lots be filled with planted material. So it would be required regardless of whether we want to see it or not.
But could they not put desert plants there?
I'm
that are
totally-
not watered?
It could be
They can have
xeriscape.
xeriscape, yeah.
But just rocks is not xeriscaping.
So do we add another line item to this that says, I mean, this is our only chance to do that, right?
Correct.
Which, correct me if you're wrong, we did require that of them
The
at
first
their
time
other,
and the second time, yes.
Right.
I mean, obviously it should be in compliance. I'm not sure if it is or not, but
I haven't seen the landscaping recently.
I think one of the photos actually showed
Showed-
the center portion. The exterior of the property, that's all landscaped and that's fine. But it's the middle.
So, and even xeriscaping would require at least a drip line system, so they'd have to run some kind of water under the parking lot. Maybe they've got sprinkling systems at the edges that they could do that with. And I don't disagree if it's going to be permanent. We didn't push too hard on the interior landscaping before because we were looking at a 1 or 2 year deal.
Right.
If it's going to be permanent, I agree. Then that those interiors ought to be concrete formed up and drip lined and xeriscaped so that there's at least that in place. That's not unreasonable.
so what would that requirements, how would we state that requirement?
I think you could make a condition, well, the required landscaped area shall be maintained and in good condition at all times. You could add maybe in that it will meet
In compliance
in
with.
compliance with the code.
Go ahead.
There is in our landscaping code, there is a difference between the frontage landscaping where it fronts on a public road and interior lots. So this would have to apply with the interior lot is what I'm assuming you're talking about.
Right.
Okay, because that code is quite specific, but yes,
Yeah, it wouldn't be
that's
the
a good
three-
idea.
It wouldn't be the 3 trees per 100 feet.
Right, gallon shrubs or whatever, yeah.
Green and growing and,
And maybe the applicant could respond as far as the water system, they're here
that's a
and
good thing.
Yeah.
maybe they can enlighten us.
And I'm completely okay with desert landscape as long as it's well done and not just, rocks thrown on asphalt. It needs to look like it has a purpose or a design or be some kind of, attractive feature so that, that it meets the code. And then I was going to say on number 5, where we want to specify, would be a good place to specify the 196 parking places, because we could put employee parking is limited to 196 spaces within the area depicted on the site plan, or, however you want to do that. Or vehicle storage is limited to 196, but put it in number 5.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, and should we take Larry H. Miller out of that? As stated, it doesn't really matter who's using the property.
I don't think it matters. I think they can deal with that in a contract if they want to change it in the contract.
And if I could add, just going back to that, if somebody wants to remember, if you do decide to add that in, you would just say that you could add a condition that states that it would meet all the requirements of Chapter 17.68 landscape requirements. That's just to help clear-
17.8.
6.8.
17.68.
6.8. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. Do you want to ask the applicant about the watering situation?
Yeah, he can
I
unmute
think
himself.
that's probably a good idea. Let him respond.
Mr. Thorson, I think you can unmute yourself.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, so regarding the watering, the property has no irrigation. So it's obviously put indigenous plants in there, but I mean, it kind of is what it is. And then as far as, you know, the rocks and the islands, that's kind of the natural water runoff because there's no storm drain on the parcel.
Okay, thank you for that answer.
So I have a question for staff then. So 17.68, does that require irrigation?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Yes.
Required landscaping
yeah.
areas must be irrigated.
Yes.
Then they would be unable to comply with that probably.
Correct.
Or they would have to invest
They would have to
in the property. And that's what we're looking for here, right? This is an investment in our city. And so this just happens to be one that maybe they weren't anticipating, but it's an investment in our city. And I just say it again, we make other properties come into compliance when they change use or when they come for conditional use. It's our best chance to keep the city current and fresh with our regulations.
Oh, this is interesting. It shouldn't be this big, but it is. Drainage, runoff. Why is there no runoff
Was
for
it
this
probably required at the time when the property
And
was developed?
Should there be?
Well, no, I think that's outside of the scope of what we need to talk about here. I mean, this is landscaping and total renovation of the property to accommodate stormwater. It's just two different things, I think.
There's landscaping around the perimeter where that runoff is going to, and if it hasn't caused problems yet, it is a giant parking lot that was going to have problems with it. Had them by now. And any redevelopment, full redevelopment, it would, obviously we'd have storm drains. I don't know that you need to go that far with this. And I think that's, in fairness to the mall and to Larry's not wanting to use it and everything, it has been kind of what it is. It was this overflow parking lot that they didn't use much. They saw an opportunity to do something there. And in fairness to all of us, we didn't have an issue with that when it was 1 or 2 years.
Temporary.
And so I think that as hard as it is to say, the solution to that same issue again would be to say, do a better job of replanting and trying to keep it naturally alive, and we'll keep you on the shorter leash for the time frame.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to
Yeah.
say, because, you know, we said this is an opportunity to upgrade, and I said this is too big of a deal for this item. I realize all that, but, you know, other cities that I've been involved, lived in, as we develop, if we don't maintain updating storm drainage, we have flooding, because in development covers more of the property, so the ground can't absorb the water. And then so I agree, it's too big for this topic, but all of these things make me lean toward we should limit the time frame on the CUP so we can address it when it is no longer too big for the property, when it should be addressed.
Okay, let's
I
see.
have a comment.
Yes.
So I agree with you. There's some city ordinances that should be met. I guess I'm a little reluctant to say, yes, let's go forward with that. The reason being is this parking lot is completely surrounded by other businesses. I think there's one residence that has a tiny corner that touches a corner of the parking lot. It's not a drive-through parking lot. It can't be seen from either 61 or State Street. And yeah, understand the city ordinance, but I think it's a little too difficult, and tend to disagree. Okay, we want the parking lots to look good. If they're on State Street, Fashion Place Mall parking lots, I would say, yeah, there's more of an inclination to do that. But nobody parks here. Christmas time, okay, yes, for 2 months. And I'm hard pressed to think that that's something to press for.
But Mr. Hacker, can I ask you a question to better understand your statement? Because I feel like I'm kind of leaning toward let's not push for all of these things. It's kind of not necessary now, but let's just put some time frames on it. Let's say this is a CUP for 5 years or something of that nature. What are you, is that too much?
What am I saying?
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying, no, don't make this precedent 2 years. Do it 2 years. But nobody sees this parking lot. So why do we want trees and major landscape on it? I've not seen the purpose, a good purpose for that.
Ned, what about in a year if suddenly Shopco decides that they're going to redevelop their site and now you have residential units looking down on this parking lot? Which is very much in the realm of possibility.
Then in 2 years, when this comes back, we can force that issue.
That's where I'm leaning, that when there is a bigger change with more money involved, force the issue. And for that reason, don't make it indefinite, make it, I don't know, whatever feels right, 3 years, 5 years.
And I agree with you, Travis. There's plenty of opportunity to the north for redevelopment in that huge space. And when that happens, I don't know, but I think a 2-year limit on this conditional use permit maintains the city's opportunity to go and do the quality landscaping in the future.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying. It's
That's
my thought.
good discussion. Thank you. Any other?
I was just going to mention that I think if they were going to do a development, I think we could go and stipulate storm drainage and stuff, but all they're trying to do is park some cars for a dealership here. And I'm not sure we need to go and, force all this stuff upon somebody that, wants to, make a little money with an empty parking lot. That's just my thought.
Well, I mean, the alternative to that is, we could deny this and tell them, use the property that you have to park cars.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah. And because those properties are in compliance. Because every time they came before us, they had to go into compliance.
I also wanted to mention that, let's say we denied this and there was storm drain issues with the property. This application doesn't fix those issues.
I don't know.
No, but I hear Mr. Nay's concern about them not following through with the conditions in the past. And we want to make sure applicants comply. So I hear that. But I still think, like you're saying, it's a property that's out of sight. No one sees it. It's not being used. This is a good use for it. So maybe it's something that we say, we're okay with it now. Do better following our conditions. And this is temporary.
Can I ask another question too? So technically, they're out of compliance right now. So if Shopco did change their property, we could go to the property and say, you're out of compliance. You need to irrigate your landscaping. Could we not, or can we not?
That's what Commissioner Nate, I'm sorry, Susan, you can answer that. No, you're fine. I keep.
I was just going to say, we're fighting over the microphone here.
You need to.
It's such an exciting topic. I was going to say that the Planning Commission does have the option of revoking a conditional use permit if conditions are not complied with. That is one issue. Then also, there is a mechanism that if there are changes to this site, that if it's over a certain amount of cost-wise for the improvements, we do have the mechanism at that point to then ask for the improvements, meaning specifically drainage. I know the city engineer has a certain dollar amount. If improvements are made to the property over a certain dollar amount, then he can require those improvements to be done.
I guess what I'm asking is, as far as the landscaping goes, if we approve this or don't approve it, either way, in the future, can we not make them come into compliance with the city code for landscaping?
That's what Travis is saying, is you have moments when you can.
Okay.
When they ask for something like a conditional use permit, is when you can.
Is this the only time we can make them come into compliance?
Unless they come in for some other application, for some other.
Okay, so let me ask another question then. So, and is that just because it's a conditional use permit? Let me
go ahead.
Let me phrase it a different way. Let's say I have 20 chickens on my property, I'm out of code. The code enforcement officer is going to come to my house and tell me, hey, you've got 20 chickens.
Right.
Can they not force me to come in compliance with the city code?
It's not the same issue.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to get.
Because the having of the chickens is a land use.
Okay.
How you have the chickens, what size your coop is, if it's too far from your fence, et cetera, that's really what we're talking about here.
Okay.
The use is allowed, parking cars, whether it's the Fashion Place Mall parking or whether it's Larry H. Miller's inventory parking, both are allowable uses. And so it's not really the use that's the issue. So the chickens is not really relatable.
So the only time we can stipulate landscaping is when there's a permit process.
Right.
And so if the front of another property, all their plants die, they let their grass die.
Yeah.
We can't do anything about that.
Yeah, we can, because they were required and they were put in and they haven't kept them up. So we can send code enforcement out to say you've got to bring this back into
Haven't we
compliance.
already required that then?
that gets into enforcement, and
That's my
historically,
question. Haven't we already required it? And so
It wasn't,
theory,
it's been
couldn't
in
we
use
go
without
enforce
those
it?
things.
Sure.
And it can continue without those things until it tries to change. That it's non-conforming and you get to continue a non-conforming use until you try to change it. And then we hit you.
And code enforcement also likes complaints. They don't just
I get that.
proactively go out and
yeah.
I
enforce
get
it.
that. I'm just trying to
But in
understand what we can or can't do.
I think some of that relates, it comes kind of full circle back for me again. I mentioned earlier that there's no opportunity cost here. We don't have some other great thing that could be happening here that's not happening because Larry H. Miller's parking cars there. That will not always be the case. And the reason, I don't think we brought it as a temporary, it was kind of applied for as a temporary use, and the Planning Commission liked that idea, and planning staff liked that idea too, because just like that Shopco site could be redeveloped, this land is acreage that could be redeveloped as well. And you're not, it may be a non-issue in 2 more years, whether you've done it in perpetuity or not, because it's going to become more and more valuable as State Street continues to face pressure for other kinds of development, like Shopco will. So there is a little bit of a, Avenue Consultants is on the line waiting to talk about transportation. And in transportation, we talk about induced demand. You can't get people out of their cars if you keep widening traffic lanes and making it easier for them to stay in their cars. You keep inducing the demand for the use of the vehicle. That's a principle that gets talked about in transportation planning all the time. There's some of that going on here. As long as we keep inducing the use for Fashion Place Mall to keep using this property this way and not building their parking structure, well, then it remains unbuilt and the parking structures don't get built and this land doesn't get redeveloped as something else or sold off. We're not trying to meddle in that. I'm just saying there are other things that are going to happen in the future, and it will not be an inventory parking lot forever. It just won't. The land will be way too valuable this close to State Street. Eventually, Fashion Place Mall will build parking structures, and they won't need this overflow parking anymore, and they will sell it off or redevelop it as something else. So it won't go on forever, but I don't hate the idea of it staying a temporary conditional use permit that gets reviewed every couple of years, because it gives us another chance and it gives us a chance and them a chance to reevaluate what's happening there again, and whether it's time to pull the trigger on something better or bigger or whatever.
Yeah, I really take
it's not
Ned's
a burden
point.
for us.
I take your point and Ned's point on that, and I'm actually it makes me comfortable saying, you're right. Maybe right now we let it go, and in 2 years, if that Shopco property's changed, we can address it. Or if there's
Or the mall grows and they have to meet their parking requirements, they have to build a parking structure, and it changes the whole dynamic of this whole spot.
So if you're comfortable with that, I mean, I think I'm comfortable with that as it reads, right? That's what you're
yes,
saying.
as it reads, with the exception of the update to number 5 to
Yeah,
limit
I
the
think we
spots,
should
but-
add
And I'm happy to make a motion unless people want to.
I'm good with that.
I think let's
further
do that, yeah.
discussion. Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve a conditional use permit for the additional 2-year time period to allow proposed vehicle storage and employee parking on the property located at the address 6011 South State Street, subject to conditions 1 through 6, with a change to condition number 5 to read: the use of the property for inventory vehicle storage and Larry H. Miller employee parking is limited to 106 spaces within the area depicted on the site plan. 196, thank you for the correction, depicted on the site plan attached to the staff report.
Great. I have a motion by Commissioner Ney to approve a conditional use permit for additional 2-year time period to allow the proposed vehicle storage and employee parking on the property located at 6011 South State Street, subject to the 6 conditions with the change to condition number 5. Is there a second?
Commissioner Hager, I'll second that.
Okay. And I have a second by Commissioner Hacker. Any discussion? We can take a vote.
Commissioner Nay,
Yes.
Commissioner Hacker,
Yes.
Commissioner Milkevich,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson,
Yes.
and Chair Patterson.
Yes. All right, motion passes for a 2-year extension. So thank you to the applicants for being here. We will move on to agenda item number 5, a conditional use permit for metal fabrication for Three Swords Forge.
Great. Thank you so much. This is a conditional use permit for metal fabrication business located at 4637 South Cherry Street. And there we go. You'll remember we recently just did a contracting conditional use permit on this property. Can you see that? Yes. Okay, good. Over here, this is a request to pretty much install a forge up in the top left corner of the building. This is a 4,200 square foot approximately space on a 0.5 acre site. It is within the MG zone, so we do allow metal fabrication subject to a conditional use permit. So the applicant's client would like to use this as he crafts swords and knives as a hobby. He also stores equipment for his entertainment business, and he would like to use this building. From what I understand, it is currently stored in Utah County, and he wants it somewhere closer to him and the airport and things like that. So this is just a quick site plan. They have more than enough parking. There's only going to be about 1 employee there on average at any given time. So there's plenty of parking there. We're not concerned with that. There are 2 accesses. I'll go back here to kind of show that. Right here next to the E in Cherry, and the second one on the south side. Definitely no issues there as well. There is just to touch on it again, we are requiring landscaping to be improved in this area, subject to the standards in 17.68, which would require, I believe, 2 additional trees. I'll show you the pictures here. So right now they have 1 tree and grass, but we are asking that 2 additional trees, 5 5-gallon shrubs, and 9 1-gallon shrubs be installed in this area. And I'll kind of go back here to the floor plan. Up here in the yellow is where they're proposing to put the forge. The rest is being used as office space, restrooms, and then I believe they're going to be gutting this all out, and it's just going to be used as storage. So with that, we are recommending that the Planning Commission approve the conditional use permit, subject to the 7 conditions. Are there any questions I can answer at this point?
Okay, great. Then we will talk to the applicant.
Okay.
I believe I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can. Thank you for being here. Will you please state your name and address for the record?
Absolutely. My name is Brent Bateman. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Dens, Durham, Jones, and Pinniger at 3301 North Thanksgiving Way in Lehigh. My client, who is, if he can get this license, is planning to buy this building. This is a simple request to just allow him to put a small forge in there. The beautiful part about this is that I just want to point out is that this building already contains a kitchen where food is prepared, and this forge is just going to be in that kitchen. So there'll be some remodeling, of course, with building permits, but this is already, it's not going to be real change just to have a little hobby forge in there. And so we really appreciate your consideration, and we'd appreciate, and all these conditions, by the way, are great. And so we really appreciate your approval.
Great. Thank you for that information. I was just going to ask you about the conditions, if you've had a chance to review the 7 conditions and comply with those conditions.
Absolutely, no problem.
Okay, wonderful. Then we will open this agenda item for public comment. If there's anyone that would like to make comment regarding this item, you can email at planningcommission@utah.murray.gov. Did we have anyone registered to speak for this agenda item? Okay. Then we will leave the public comment open for a few minutes if anyone wants to speak to this item.
I'll just make comment that we haven't received any phone calls or anything on this at all.
Okay.
Pretty.
Great. Any? All right. We'll close the public comment portion then. If the commissioners have any questions for the applicant or motion.
I just see him scrambling eggs and making knives.
Mr. Smallwood later will have to explain to me the benefit of having your forge close to the airport, but otherwise it sounds great to me.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion. Are we at that point?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we approve a conditional use permit to allow the operation of a fabricated metals business at the property addressed 4637 South Cherry Street, subject to conditions 1 through 7.
Is there a second?
Can I second that motion?
Okay. I have a motion to approve a conditional use permit to allow the operation of a fabricated metals business at the property address 4636 South Cherry Street, subject to the 7 conditions. A motion by Commissioner Wilson and a second by Commissioner Malkiewicz. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, then we can take a vote.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Malkiewicz,
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson,
Yes.
Commissioner Ney,
Yes.
Commissioner Hacker,
Yes.
and Chair Patterson.
Yes, motion passes. And congratulations and good luck on the forging.
Thank you so much. Thank you, commissioners, very much. My client will be very happy. Thank you.
Thank you for being here tonight with us. Okay, we will move on to our next agenda item. 6 and 7 will be presented together. A conditional use permit for residential infill and preliminary and final subdivision for Bamberg Place.
Thank you. This application is from Alan Prince on behalf of Monterey Properties. You recently saw the zone change for the property at 344 East, 5600 South. That was changed from R18 to R16 and had a general plan amendment that changed another portion from RM15 to R16. The applicant has now returned with a subdivision request for residential infill. The property is located in the R16 zone. As shown, okay, and here's a exhibit of the subdivision. Excuse me. Mr. Prince is proposing to have a 7-lot subdivision with a parcel A, which would be an open space pocket park at the south end of the subdivision. The residential infill subdivision regulations, which is section 17.58, do allow Planning Commission authority to vary the improvements such as the road and right-of-way with Planning Commission approval and also city engineer review and approval. Let's see, let's go to the next one. The exhibit here shows the open space or park at the south end there on the right-hand side of the map. And then all the lots will have at least 6,000 square feet, and they all meet the lot and depth requirements. And the residential infill does allow for a variation on the setbacks. They can have 20 feet front and the typical 25-foot rear. The side setback is minimum of 5, and on the corner would be 20 for the corner side yard. Do you want to go to the next one? Okay, so the exhibit shown here shows a detention drainage easement on the is highlighted in pink. That property is actually going to be owned by the adjacent property owner to the east, but will be have an access easement across it, and the homeowners will have a contract with them to pay them a fee to maintain that. And the HOA will also maintain the open space pocket park down at the south end there. So the residential infill, this would be a public road with a 40-foot right-of-way. Typically, it's 49 feet. They have requested to have, in the 40-foot total right-of-way, 25 feet will be paved asphalt. They will have 6-foot sidewalks and 2.5-foot curb and gutter adjacent to the sidewalks. So there will be no park strip. The park strip will be eliminated. And under the Section 1758, Planning Commission does have authority to review and approve this type of a request for the residential infill. I neglected to mention that the residential infill are for properties that are less than 2 acres, and this has about 1.5 acres. You've also received in your packet a copy of the CC&Rs, which do spell out how the HOA will be maintained and how the pocket park and the drainage easement will be maintained also. And Title 16 of our subdivision code and state code, section 10.9A.604 do require planning commission approval for subdivisions. And if the planning commission seeks to approve this tonight, then the applicant would need to record the plats.
Susan?
Yes.
Real sorry to interrupt, but I'm getting somebody else's commission meeting in my headset.
Thank you for that. We'll have that little technicality fixed here. Thanks. Also, while he's fixing that, as shown on the screen, it does show that the landscaping that would be proposed for the open space in the pocket park with trees, etc. And again, that would be maintained by the HOA. Let's see, is that all? So based on the review, let's look at that. Sorry. Here's some exhibits of the property. The top 2 are from viewing from 5600 South, and same with the lower left-hand corner. The right, lower right is the view from Hillside Drive, and would be also where the pocket park is located at. So the next one. So staff is recommending that the Planning Commission approve a conditional use for the residential infill and preliminary and final subdivision, subject to the conditions outlined, and there are numerous. There's 3 pages of them. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions from the commission?
There's no fencing requirement around the perimeter of the property, correct?
That's correct. There's none required. I believe the applicant has indicated that he would have a solid masonry wall along the 2 lots that are adjacent to 5600 South, but there is none required because it's residential, adjacent to residential, so we can't require it.
I had a question along the same lines. So then the property line, the pocket park along Hillside, will there be fencing there? Will it remain open, or that's up to future residents to decide?
That would be up to the developer, Mr. Prince, whether he would choose to have one or not. There is a vinyl fence that is along the majority of what would be Lot 4, I believe. No, 5. Lot 5. There is an existing vinyl fence there now, and that will remain. And then I believe he may install some kind of a fence along the pocket park. He did indicate that, but I don't think he wanted to be held to anything specific since it's not required.
I was just looking at walkability from the neighborhood to the new area.
Yeah.
And will that new neighborhood, this little subdivision of 7, have a gate along the front, or any requirements that would prohibit it from having a gate?
No, there couldn't be prohibited, but I guess it could have a gate, but the gate would just be like a man gate because there wouldn't be any vehicular traffic that would access through there.
I mean, on 5600.
Oh, on 5600. No, none is not required. None is not required, and he's not proposing to have a gate.
Not allowed.
And yeah, it's not allowed either.
Public street.
Right. So,
And then I had one other question. I think I know the answer to, but I still want to ask. Where is it? The water department expressed a significant concern with the water line, and I think it's item number, there it is, a major issue with the water main. And I think it's one of the conditions, but it's it can be addressed with the condition and it shouldn't be a major concern to us?
No, the developer will just have to work that out with the water department and install whatever's required, or they won't get the permits for it. So
I felt like I needed the comment because they never have major concerns.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I was like, oh, major concern.
But the developer's been aware of that right from the get-go. He did his homework and checked with all the departments, so he was aware of this before he ever spent the time really to design the subdivision to the extent that he has. So, and he's on, I believe he's present, so he could answer any other questions on that if you wish to ask or want him to respond.
Great. Any other questions for staff?
I think it's exciting that someone figured out how to use this land.
So creative how they did this. For sure.
And it's extremely exciting that it's, maybe to me, I speak for myself, that it's a single family home because we've had enough stress about multiple family and high density homes. So, right.
It's true. It was zoned, other way. Okay. Then
I'd like to ask a confirming question. So the street is a little bit smaller than city requirements. So is Trey good with that as far as security, snow removal, access, that sort of thing?
Yes, it is going to be designed to public standards. Again, it just won't have the park strip. Initially, when Mr. Prince was investigating this property, he met with Trey Stokes, the city engineer, and myself, and that was definitely addressed and talked through. Initially, he wanted to do a private road, but we informed him that the city no longer allows them. But we did give this option where the residential infill does allow for some variation on that. So to answer your question, yes, he has reviewed this. He is okay with this proposal for the 42-foot right-of-way and no park strips. So.
Great, thank you. Good job.
I feel moved to say one more thing about the park strip because we keep bringing up there's no park strip, and I think it's a good plan for this project and needed so this land could be developed. But we have to acknowledge that park strips are nice. I think it prevents people from parking on the sidewalk. If there's no park strip, people think it's okay to park there on the cement wide sidewalk and all.
The wonderful thing about this is it's a 6-foot sidewalk. You don't have 6-foot sidewalks in residential neighborhoods very often. So I think it's actually an asset to the community. If you're going to get rid of the trees, it's a way to improve it. So,
yeah. Any other comments about? Okay, then let's have the applicant get unmuted, and if they will just state their name and address for the record.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. My name's Alan Prince, and my address is 11142 Eagle View Drive in Sandy.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there any, have you had a chance to review the conditions for this application?
I have.
And you'll be able to comply with those?
Yes, we don't see any reason that we can't comply with them.
Wonderful. Is there any additional information that you would like to give us about this project?
Well, it's a privilege to develop in Murray. This is the 9th subdivision that I've done, and I love the city and love the opportunity to deal with you, and we're just very humbled and grateful for the opportunity. I might just address the water issue. When we first talked about this, we had envisioned running a water line in and stopping it at the top of the cul-de-sac. And I think the concern of the water department was that with the inadequacy of sizing in 5600, they wanted to, in effect, demand, which I thought was the right thing to do, was to loop that water, not cul-de-sac it, not end it, but to loop it through and connect, which in this case would go to underneath the Pocket Park and connect a loop out into Hillside Drive. And we understand that. We've designed our plans accordingly, and I believe that satisfies the concern of the water department.
Wonderful. Thank you for that information. Do any commissioners have any questions for the applicant? Okay. Then we will open this agenda item for public comment regarding this. If there is anyone that would like to make a comment for this agenda item, you can do so by emailing planningcommission@murray.utah.gov. Have we had anyone register before the meeting? Okay. Then we will just wait and see if there's any comment about this.
There, the notices that were sent out, we didn't receive any response whatsoever. Initially, when Mr. Prince was investigating this property and going through the zone change, and that we had a lot of people actually indicate they were in favor of something like this, and we're actually relieved to see a proposal similar to this. So,
Yeah, I was going to say it's kind of close to when they've been noticed for the change. So I'm sure that they maybe got some of their questions answered already.
yes, yeah, they did.
Okay, well, have any emails come? Then we will close the public comment portion of this meeting for this item. And if there's any further discussions or questions, or we can entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman, I'll make the motion. Make a motion that the Planning Commission approve the conditional use permit for residential infill and grant preliminary and final subdivision approval for the Bamberg Place subdivision on the property address 344 East, 5600 South, subject to conditions 1 through 11.
Great. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. I have a motion by Commissioner Hacker to approve a conditional use permit for the residential infill and grant preliminary and final subdivision approval for the Bamberg Place subdivision on the property address 344 East, 5600 South, subject to the 11 conditions, with a second by Commissioner Pearson. Is there any discussion on that motion?
Can I just make a comment?
Yeah.
I think that this is probably one of the most proactive applications that I've dealt with in my years on the commission. And I just commend the way that he has worked with the neighborhood, because when we've seen other applications with this property, the neighbors have been resistant to some of the ideas that have been put forward. I think he's really done a very good job with this. So thank you.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Okay, we can take a vote.
Commissioner Hacker,
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Milkevich,
Yes.
Commissioner Ney,
Yes.
and Chair Patterson.
Yes. So motion passes, and you are approved to move forward with this project. I'm really excited to see how this all comes out.
I'm excited to walk.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. Okay, we'll move on to our next agenda item, number 8, subdivision review for preliminary and final subdivision for a lot of commercial subdivision to facilitate development at Murray Square.
So before we get started, I don't see the applicant. Do you? And so I'm wondering, do you guys want to go forward with it, or do you want to table it, or?
What would the commission like to do? Would you have a love?
As a third option, just could we change the order of the agenda in case they come back? Maybe they went to the restroom or.
I never saw them log on.
So they're probably not going to be here today.
I personally, with the memorandum of understanding that's in place, I don't have an issue with hearing this item, whether they're here or not. I don't think that they're really going to add much to the conversation. I think we understand the intent of what they're looking at. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and I do feel like this is a way for them to move forward on the commercial part of their project that they're already underway on the, getting the residential part. It doesn't seem to me like it's in any conflict. I don't have a lot of questions, I guess, for the developer to subdivide these properties.
Okay.
Agree.
Okay.
I had to think about it for a second. I don't think I have many questions, but I do know this is an extremely hot topic in that neighborhood. And if I'm a little bit worried if residents or anyone else there's zero email, zero. Okay.
Spoiler alert, 0.
Can I ask a quick question? So let's say we decide to take this up, we get some comment, and we decide, yeah, we better wait.
You can table it
Continue
later.
the motion.
Yes.
Yeah, you can continue
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. I think unless we hear from Commissioner Hacker or Wilson, we can move forward and get the presentation.
Great.
I'm good with moving forward. I just had one brief question that I can ask whenever it's appropriate.
Okay, great.
Okay, I'll do my presentation then, and then we can talk about any questions or whatever. Okay, so this is item number 8, Murray Square, requesting preliminary and final subdivision approval for a 3-lot commercial subdivision at 4670 South, 900 East. You'll remember this as the Kmart property. There's also an old Meineke, there we go, right there. There is currently a Java Joe's that is still there. So this is actually in the mixed use zone. We rezoned that from commercial development, which is above in the north and south of it, to the mixed use zone a while back. So this is simply a request to subdivide into 3 lots. You have lot 1, which is the very large lot, which will hold 2 of the residential buildings. Lot 2 is proposed to be the commercial subdivision part of it, which will have most of the commercial development along there. And then lot 3, which will have a portion of it be a vertical mixed use type project. So there will be commercial out on 9th East with residential along the rest of the portion of the property as well. Part of, like I had mentioned in the pre-meeting, this is bound by the Memorandum of Understanding, which requires that outlines how things shall get developed and how this will move forward. So I put this is kind of what you'll notice once this gets recorded and starts building. They have begun construction, I believe, on both building A and B. So you can see that here. So this property line will go through this access here along the, east side of the property, with leaving the existing building here open as is and the southern property vacant as is right now as well. So this is, like I had mentioned, is bound by that Memorandum of Understanding. So even though it's being subdivided into 3 parcels and would allow for 3 different owners, it is still bound by that. So somebody couldn't come back in and ask, say on lot 2, which is the commercial lot, and ask for additional residential space to be placed here because it's governed by that MOU. As you can, for on lot 2, lot 3, and lot 1. Here's just this is a utility plan kind of showing where utilities are going to be, are proposed along here on the east side and as well along this private, this access, I should say. It's not necessarily a private road. So we are a couple of photos. Like Jared kind of mentioned, stuff is moving, so they have taken down the Kmart. I don't know if you guys have been down by there. The Kmart is down. They are moving dirt around and actually building, starting to build stuff there, so it's great. So we are recommending that the Planning Commission grant preliminary and final subdivision approval for the Murray Square subdivision, subject to the 6 conditions that are outlined in your staff report. Any questions I can answer at the moment?
I just have a question. On the plat map, it shows 4680 South Street, and then in parentheses, private right-of-way.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be painted similar to what a street would be to give access to the subdivision to the west?
It will. So let me share my screen here. I apologize. So as you can see, and you can kind of see that here, it will be a striped and, for all intents and purposes, a road. It looks and feels like a road. It's going to have curbing and access to the neighborhood over here on the left, on the west side. So it will be improved to look almost like a street, but there's going to be parking and stuff there too. So
that's good, because I remember when we met on this originally, the citizens were concerned that live in that subdivision that they'd lose their access. So I appreciate that they're making this a good access for them in and out.
Definitely. And then also that's governed by the memorandum of understanding as well, that will remain open pretty much forever.
Any other questions?
Mr. Smallwood, can I ask you a question just for clarification? I think for clarification of my memory, there's 3 plots. That one big plot is residential and ground floor commercial. The plot number 1, I think, on northeast along 9th East is commercial. The south plot, I thought that was all commercial. Is it residential commercial?
Yeah, it's residential and commercial. So it'll be commercial right along 9th East, and then with residential above it, and then it'll be residential going west.
Wait, so say that one more time. 9th East is just commercial, right? Then the big plot is a mix, and then that southern plot.
Actually, so here, let me share it one more time just to make sure. So, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so these 2 buildings are purely residential. There is no commercial in these 2 buildings. Those are purely residential. These, however, satisfy the commercial requirement that is required to be built within 5 years. Will satisfy all the commercial requirements that was tied to this lot here, or this entire site. So this, and then this building will have commercial along the 9th East frontage, and then will be allowed to have residential going west. And that was a previous approval.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff? Okay. Well, if the applicant is not here, then I'll just open the public comment. Okay. I would like to open public comment for this agenda item. If you would like to make a comment for this agenda item, you can email the Planning Commission at planningcommission@murray.utah.gov. And we will leave that open for a minute.
And I will say, I forgot about this until I was making the presentation. I did have one gentleman come in earlier this week that just had questions about it. He just wanted to know what it meant. And so I clarified that this is pretty much just drawing imaginary lines. But the project itself is not changing. So that's all I've received.
Great. If we haven't received any emails, I'll close the public comment portion and bring it up back to our commission for either more discussion or a motion.
Madam Chairman, I'll make motion that Planning Commission grant the preliminary and final subdivision approval for the Murray Square subdivision on property located at 4670 South, 900 East, subject to conditions 1 through 6.
Great. Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Okay. I have a motion by Commissioner Hacker to grant preliminary and final subdivision approval for the Murray Square subdivision on the property located at 4670 South, 900 East, subject to the 6 conditions, with a second by Commissioner Wilson. Is there any discussion on that motion? Okay, we can take a vote.
Commissioner Hacker?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
Commissioner Milkevich?
Yes.
Commissioner Ney?
Yes.
And Chair Patterson?
Yes. Motion passes for that item. So we can move on to agenda items number 9 and 10, which will be presented together. For Garbett Homes, requesting approval to amend the Spring Creek Cove PUD on the setbacks.
That's correct. So this request, as you said, is from Garbett Homes. Jacob Balstead was the applicant. The Planning Commission approved the PUD and subdivision in December of last year and also preliminary in March of last year for a 15-lot subdivision located at 5070 South, 1100 East, and also 5091 South Wesley Road. Property is on 5 acres, and as shown on the monitor there, it is located within the R1A zone. The PUD section of our code does allow for variations for setbacks, lot widths, specifically in areas that are difficult to develop. This property is very difficult. It's got a lot of steep terrain towards the east side, and there are wetlands and is heavily wooded. So the developer, as you are all aware, granted preliminary and final subdivision approval for PUD. The applicant in recent month or so, when they were plotting out the design of the homes, discovered that the homes that they had planned on having in the PUD would not fit on lots 4 and 5. And the PUD, part of the approval requires that they have a theme and the architecture is similar in materials and color schemes, et cetera. And the homes that they had selected for their theme in the PUD would not fit with the previously approved setbacks. So the applicant applied for a variation for lot 4 and 5 specifically to have a lesser setback in the rear yard. Go ahead and change. Because of the steep terrain towards the east side, lots 4 and 5 are affected with that. Now, the setbacks that they're requesting for lot 4 would be a 15-foot rear yard, and lot 5 is 10-foot rear yard. That may sound really small, but the reality of it is the setbacks, the homes would be a long distance from another residential home because of the steep terrain. It's just because of that steep terrain that they need the lesser setback. Otherwise, the homes would not qualify for the height definition of our height and basement definitions. So, I want to change there. I want you all now to sit back and relax for a few minutes. A year ago, I had our GIS department fly over this property with our drone. And so I'd like for you to actually see the property because it's difficult to see if you're walking there. So you can see the steep terrain, the heavy wooded area. There's also the wetlands. You're actually looking to the east at this point, but you can't see the steep terrain because it drops off. So our GIS department recently got a drone, and this is actually pretty cool. So
We should expect to see these more often.
we should. In fact, I actually would like to have another one done when it's completed, and we'll show the before and after. And this is Wesley Road that you're looking at now.
That's the former drug house.
No, that's okay.
Yes. there used to be a house there, correct. This property is actually ideal for a PUD specifically, and it's 5.5 acres of a lot of property, but not a lot of it is usable because of the steep terrain and the wetlands.
Is that the wetland right there?
Almost.
My point exactly. Wetlands are pretty dry today.
I'm so glad that they did this because even when we went to look at it, it's not easy to walk around. It's because of that steep slope and heavy wooded area. So. The subdivision plat has not been recorded, but so with this, if Planning Commission chooses to approve the modified setbacks for lot 4 and 5, then they would just record the plat after that.
I think you're kind of seeing the buildable part.
Is there still a stream that runs through the back of that property?
Yes,
Yes,
that's Spring Creek.
Spring Creek.
that's the name, yes.
That's why the name. It's-
But I guess I should have said, is there any water in it?
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
Yep.
So these are the current photos that you're now looking at. View from Wesley Road, and the one on the upper right is of the south. The one on the lower right is looking to the north, and that's the area actually where the homes will be built. And go ahead, change that. So staff is recommending approval for the modification of the conditional use for the planned unit development, and also modification amendment to the subdivision, subject to the conditions outlined as you see above. You probably will need to make two separate motions since they were two approvals, two applications. Any questions?
The views on those properties are beautiful. Who's the tennis court belong to?
I'm sorry?
Apartments, I think, behind.
The tennis court belong to the apartments?
Oh, yes. Condominiums, I believe they're condominiums.
And is it in use? Do they use it?
I think so, yeah, as far as I know.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, then we can speak to the applicant. If when they are unmuted, they can state their name and address for the record.
Jacob Balstead, Garbett, 273 North East Capitol Street, Salt Lake City, Utah, 84103.
Thank you so much for being with us yet again. I know that we've seen you a lot of times for this project. Were you able to review the conditions for both the conditional use permit and the subdivision amendment?
Yeah, but I don't know that there were any conditions unless I'm missing them.
There's just a few conditions. Well, there's 5 conditions, if I'm reading that right, or is that 6?
3.
Actually, there's 3.
For the
3 and 3. Yeah.
3 and 3.
I don't think they're any different from our original conditions, I think. Looking at them now, I found them.
Do you want to put them back up on the screens, Zach, and that? No, they're just to update. Well, we'll pull them back up here again. They're really identical for both the CUP and the subdivision amendment. Yeah.
Will you be able to comply with those conditions, Mr. Balstead?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is there any additional information you would like to give us regarding this application?
Oh, I think that, no, I think staff did a good job explaining it's just tight on that north side, and we have limits on what we can do as it relates to building heights, and the biggest issue really is our decks. The decks count within the building envelope, and drop offs off the back of these homes. We need to have some decks, and those are some of the primary reasons for what we're doing. Additionally, there's really nothing behind us. We have a wetland behind lot 5, and a lot of us, there's not really a neighbor there for, I don't know, a couple hundred feet to the mobile home park. On lot 4, there is some open space and a trailer and a tennis court on the condominium site. The trailer court, unless they've changed it, I don't think it's been in use for many. Last I saw it, so I don't know if that's any help. But
Okay, great.
that's all I have.
Yeah, thank you so much. Then we will open this agenda item for public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment for this item, you can do so by emailing at planningcommission@murray.utah.gov. Did we have anyone register before the meeting to comment? Okay. So we will just leave the public comment portion open in case anyone wants to comment on this item.
However, in the staff report, it says that there was one public comment,
Yes, there was one.
only suggesting that the different house plan be accommodated to not require a setback, an
Yes.
additional setback.
Yes. Thank you, Commissioner Hacker. Yeah, we saw that in our packets. Thank you for bringing that up. Have you received any emails this item?
No.
Okay, then I'll close the public comment portion and bring it back up to the commission for more discussion or questions or a motion.
Generally stated, this Wesley Road project has been a pretty vocal group over the years.
Yeah,
Surprising that we just have the one comment in our packet.
I was expecting more as well.
Madam Chair, if I may, I'll make a motion that the Planning Commission approve the conditional use permit amendments for the Spring Creek Cove PUD, subject to conditions 1 through 3 as written.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. I have a motion by Commissioner Ney to approve the conditional use permit amendment for Spring Creek Cove PUD, subject to the 3 conditions, and a second by Commissioner Malkiewicz. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, then we can vote.
Commissioner Ney?
Yes.
Commissioner Milkevich?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hacker?
Yes.
And Chair Patterson?
Yes. And then we can entertain a motion for the subdivision amendment. Would anyone like to make a motion for that?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that the Planning Commission approve the subdivision amendment for Spring Creek Cove subdivision, amending the rear yard setbacks on lots number 4 and 5, subject to conditions 1 through 3.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hacker. I have a motion by Commissioner Ney to approve the subdivision amendment for Spring Creek Cove subdivision, amending the rear yard setbacks on Lot 4 and Lot 5, subject to the 3 conditions, and a second by Commissioner Hacker. Is there any discussion? We can take a vote on that motion.
Commissioner Ney?
Yes.
Commissioner Hacker?
Yes.
Commissioner Milkevich?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
And Chair Patterson?
Yes. So both motions passed to move forward with this project. I know that you've had to really work hard to make this this all work. So it'll be exciting when construction starts. So congratulations. Okay. Our last agenda item, waiting patiently for a whole meeting. Agenda item number 11 for review and discussion on the master transportation plan.
And I was going to just be quiet and turn the time over to the consultants and engineering division to go ahead and present the plan. Zach was going to let you share the screen as needed. We already enabled that. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I will. Oh, okay.
Okay. Thanks, Jared. I'm going to go first, and can you all see my screen, and can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I can.
Perfect. Thanks. Good evening, and thanks for the opportunity to be here tonight and present our 2021 Transportation Master Plan. I think I know most of you on the Planning Commission, but I think there's 1 or 2 new faces. So for any of you that I haven't met, I'm Trey Stokes. I'm the city engineer, and I've been with Murray City for about 26 years. And this is the second transportation plan that I've been involved with. Also attending this evening via Zoom is Chris Zawizlak, who's a senior engineer here with the city and project manager on this project. And we also have Thomas here from Thomas McCurdy from Avenue Consultants, who managed the project for them. So to get started, I'm going to just jump in and provide a brief introduction and some background information from past transportation plans, briefly discuss purpose and process, and kind of generally what got us here tonight. And then Thomas is going to take the lion's share of the presentation and talk about the real substance of the plan. So with that, we really try quite hard to keep our master plans updated and we like to do this every 10 years. We really like to follow a general plan or major land use changes. I think that's important. Also like to follow up and do updates when we have major development and major growth. Bottom line is that we haven't quite made our 10-year goal, but we're not too far off. Recent history, the city's completed transportation master plans in 1993, 2006, and we're working on this one in 2021. So, 3 in the last 30 years, but our spread there is not quite 10 years, just a little greater than 10 years. In 1993, that transportation master plan was fairly simple. It was done concurrently with the 93 general plan. Primary objective was to identify impacts of future development and growth. Results were 12 priority projects, and one of the big ones was the need for a north-south collector road between I-15 and State Street. At that point in time, it was called a Main Street extension. Since then, it's been referred to as Cottonwood Street. So even though this was a fairly basic plan back in 1993, it served the city well. I came on in 1995 and was handed this plan, and we went to work, and in about 10 years, we made some fairly significant efforts on projects that had been identified in this plan. So got a list of accomplishments. This is not all of the accomplishments, but it's a good list. We started out with widening Winchester east of State Street. We worked on the first phase of Cottonwood Street through the Murray smelter site and build a big flyover bridge there. So that was kind of the start of that north-south collector through Murray. We did some widening on 5300 South. Walden Glen was extended to Bullion Street. Did some restriping and some signal work on 5600 South. We did some widening on 9th East in conjunction with Winchester project up on the northeast end of the southeast end of the city. And I think the big one here at the end is we worked really close with UTA on the light rail project in the late 90s and early 2000s. Light rail benefited Murray greatly with the 3 stations, and dividends have continued to pay on that one. 2006 was when we did the next master plan. It followed a 2003 general plan, so lagged just a couple of years. But it also included a lot of the east side annexations, which were a real positive thing to kind of get familiar with that area and look at some of the needs up in that east side. So this was a little more of a comprehensive plan. Our objectives definitely grew with this plan. And included, providing safe and efficient movement of traffic, encouraging use of alternate modes of transportation, support neighborhood traffic calming, increase mass transit options, promote capacity improvements on regional corridors, provide north-south collector between I-15 and State. So that was still a priority to finish that Cottonwood Street off. And then something that came out of that, the east side annexations, was really to focus on maintaining and repairing existing streets. So when we annexed that area, it was not in real good condition. So we've been working ever since to reconstruct roads and make improvements in that area. So this plan identified 14 priority roadway and signal projects, and again, focused on that north-south collector, that Cottonwood Street. Major accomplishments are listed on the right. We added dual left turns at the intersection of State and 5300 South. We made intersection improvements at State and 4500 South, including dual left turns in the east and westbound direction. We worked with UDOT on widening 4500 South between I-15 and State Street. We continued work on Cottonwood Street with major intersection improvements at Winchester, kind of partnered with UTA and with the Mid-Jordan Light Rail project there. We made improvements at 4500 South in Maine. And just a few years ago, we made improvements at 5900 South and 3rd West as part of the 5900 South reconstruction project. Also worked really close with UTA on the commuter rail. And there's another one in there, Vine Street. As y'all know, I think we added bike lanes to Vine Street from pretty much one end of the city to the other. And we've done some minor widening east of 9th East and added some sidewalks up there. And we're working on another phase that will continue sidewalks and bike lanes all the way to Van Winkle and into Holiday.
All I can say is thank you.
You're welcome. We'll keep on that. So the main purpose of the 2021 Transportation Master Plan was to account for changes in the 2017 General Plan. This was a major update to a general plan. It did have a lot of land use changes, and it also has kind of a focus or emphasis on mixed use projects. Another aspect is to really analyze those mixed use areas and identify where we're going to have that future growth and kind of how to deal with that. Also, it helps us identify and set transportation priorities, identify projects that qualify for state and federal funding, as well as it really helps us to develop budgets and yearly capital improvement plans. So I think we kind of talked a little bit about that earlier. This is my last slide, and there's quite a bit on it, but I'll continue to move as fast as I can. This is sort of an overview of the process that we followed to get us here tonight. And it started with funding back in 2020. This project is funded by the city, no outside funds. We received funding in the 2020 budget. Next step was to develop goals and objectives, and they're somewhat similar to the 2006 goals and objectives, but they parallel really good with the transportation component in the general plan. I think they're really, really close there. Next step was to select a technical advisory committee, and we got some great resources here at Murray City. This advisory committee was made up of Doug Hill from the mayor's office, Danny Astle from Public Works, myself from engineering, Chris Zawislak from engineering, Jared Hall was part of the committee from planning, and then Kip Davies from police. And the idea behind this technical advisory committee was really to work hand in hand with our consultant and provide that expertise and really keep the project moving. And I think this committee did a good job that way. Next step was to develop a project scope and solicit proposals from consultants. We had really good proposals from consultants. I think we had 6. Our advisory committee spent a fair amount of time evaluating those and ended up selecting Avenue to take the lead. And they began work on the plan in April 2020. They kicked off several things in April, but one of the main things was reaching out and getting the public involved. That was a little bit tricky in the middle of a pandemic. We kind of had to change the way we worked and the way we did things. And Avenue had some great ideas, and we did things on a project website with an interactive map and some surveys, and actually got some really valuable data that kind of helped us set priorities and identify issues out there that we weren't really aware of. So it really helped us develop a lot of good solutions. At the same time this was going on, they were working on data collection and traffic modeling of existing and future conditions. And this was really the bulk of their work. And it kind of took a little bit longer because we kept seeing big developments pop up. You know, it seemed like every other week a new big development would pop up or go into a different area. And we kind of had to adapt and sort of try to build those developments into our model to really to kind of accurately define what was happening out there. So got a pretty good handle on it. It took us a little bit longer than we planned, but I think things worked out really well. And I think we've managed to include a lot of those big mixed use developments that I think we're going to see over the next couple of years. Next step was to develop a capital improvement plan. And that kind of took place the end of last year and first part of this year. Once that was sort of finalized, we were able to finish the report and do some review iterations and then ultimately reach out for some additional public involvement. And again, we were sort of at the end of the pandemic, but we still didn't feel good about big public meetings at that point. So we reached out to the public with a website, with a storybook on the website and a survey. And really, again, I think we capitalized on that and got some good input. I think as much input as we would have gotten in the standard ways that we have done things in the past. So again, Avenue did a great job with that, and I feel good with the involvement that we've gotten. So with that, it kind of leaves us with you tonight, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now and turn the time over to Thomas. And Thomas is he's a great presenter, and gets real excited about traffic and transportation plans. And so he can probably keep you entertained for a while, as long as you want to listen anyway. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and let Thomas take over.
All right. Thank you. Trey's right. I do get, Ned knows me pretty well. I do get pretty excited, especially about like fun transportation stuff that we get to look at. Trey, thank you. It was really great working with Trey and Chris. Chris called me every single week over the last year. We spoke all the time. We had tons of meetings where we got to like collaboratively work through stuff. It was so great to have Jared and Doug and others on the team. Working with Murray City was really a pleasure. It really kind of helped, keep the project moving and I think delivered a great product. If you guys haven't been to the website, our project website is murraytransportationplan.com. And if I open that up, it looks like this. It's got a great deal of information. In fact, one of the things that we tried to do with the website is we put so much of the plan directly on the website, because you can click on this blue link right here and download a PDF of the plan. It's over 100 pages. It's beautiful. It's got lots of great stuff in it. But we thought that, it might be a little long to ask our citizenry maybe to read the whole thing. And so we put like so much of like the most important content directly into the website. So you can just kind of like casually scroll and still pick up on, major outcomes and the things that we studied and, see, a lot of the content, and also provide you feedback directly from the site. By the way, the mayor provided us with a great introduction video. That was fun to go shoot with him. It took us about 10 takes. It was about 45 minutes to get about 30-second video, but it was a lot of fun, to shoot that in the mayor's office. It worked out really well. So I wanted to walk you through maybe, some of the more important parts of the plan. Again, if you've seen the document, all the stuff is kind of in there. We started focusing on existing conditions, as Trey mentioned, looking at the existing data that exists out there. Part of that is your active transportation, and that's what it's on the screen today, or right now. You've been adding bike lanes recently, notably on Vine Street and 700 West. You've got the Jordan River Trail through your community, but there's also a bunch of shared roadways to accommodate cyclists. So you're making some real good progress throughout Murray in terms of having existing transportation, active transportation network. As Trey mentioned, you're also pretty blessed to have the transit network that you do. Murray's got 3 track stops and a commuter rail stop. There are bus lines throughout the city that have, dozens of stops that do a pretty good job of serving your population. If you look at this map, the areas that are blue are areas that are beyond half a mile from transit. So if you take and do a half-mile radius of the transit stops, these folks don't, in the blue areas can't walk easily to transit stops. And so almost your entire city is white, or rather that people have access to transit and can at least get to a stop kind of within half a mile, which is pretty good coverage. And we heard a lot about transit from folks. And again, Murray's in a pretty good place with transit. You have pretty decent ridership. The track stations are very heavily used, or at least they were pre-pandemic. And maybe, perhaps the most important part of the transportation plan are roads, really the backbone of how people navigate and move around the community. This is the existing functional classification system with, principal arterials and collectors. The freeways, of course, that bisect Murray and controlled by UDOT. And so many of these corridors, are important. And we wanted to really, spend a lot of time, taking a close look and focusing on some of the modeling of what's going to happen to the future. And so, of course, that started with looking at existing traffic volumes. So how much traffic is already on our roads? Where are we carrying a decent amount of cars? And so if you look at this map, the freeways kind of jump out as that, they're carrying hundreds of thousands of cars. But our arterials, State Street, 45th, 54th, Van Winkle, those also carry a decent amount of cars. They're all in that 30,000 range. You can see some of the volumes. These are 2019 volumes, by the way. And Murray is really served well by those corridors. They're mostly all state routes or UDOT controlled streets. But if you take a step down and look more at some of our collectors, throughout the community, there's a lot that are carrying, in excess of 10,000 cars a day, including Murray Boulevard, 700 West, Winchester, sections of Vine Street. And so those are ones that we're, particularly, paying a lot of attention to, right? Because they're carrying a lot of our traffic, and we want to make sure that we're serving the community well. And so, while volumes are important, if you take that one step further and actually look at measures of congestion on those streets, this is the same map of traffic volumes, but in this case, we're showing level of service. And this data comes directly from Wasatch Front's travel demand model. This is, again, existing. This is calibrated to those volumes that we saw. And corridors that are red are falling into that level of service E and D, right? Again, it's a measure of congestion based on delay, and it gets a letter score of A through F, right? So if you're F, you're failing, and that's probably not good. But we have a lot of roads. This is existing. So just look at how many roads are C and D that aren't necessarily failing, but they're orange and yellow, and so they're carrying a decent amount of traffic, and they're kind of like on that cusp. They're getting close to failure, right? They're carrying a lot of traffic and they can handle it, but they're really, really approaching their capacity. And that is really like the main, theme of kind of where Murray is. We're doing a good job making sure people can move safely throughout the community, but we're getting really close to having some problems. And then when we add growth on top of that, as you'll see, it'll exacerbate things a little bit. So we, as part of this plan, we spend a lot of time looking at planned growth in the community. And this is a chart kind of showing employment, population, and household growth, kind of where we are today. Again, those kind of 2019 numbers. Murray has 49,000 people and 56,000 jobs. In fact, it's one of only 3 cities in the entire state, I believe, that have more jobs than people. And so, you're a little bit unusual in that aspect. And what that means is that during the day, you will often have more folks driving in your community than you do in the evening, right? Because people commute in for their jobs, as opposed to a lot of bedroom communities like West Jordan, where I live, where folks, drive to a job, somewhere else, probably in Murray. And so, that is an interesting dynamic and something that we were paying attention to when we were looking at a lot of our travel demand models. And then as Trey mentioned, and that you guys have been, taking a look at and talking about tonight, there's several areas of planned growth and specifically some, mixed use zones. Specifically, the map that you see that has kind of like it's like a heat map that shows kind of a more density of, in this case, household growth, is based on traffic analysis zone data that we've kind of calibrated and worked on. But I can tell you that, and was mentioned earlier here, like the Galleria apartments, that the data from there is in here, as well as data from other developments and the growth that Kinsey Gardner Policy Institute and Wasatch Front Regional Council have been planning in the community. And then we have employment as well. So it's not just people that are growing there. There's job growth as well, and this includes like the Security National development and others. You'll see there's a little bit of a node near the mall, on the north end of the mall, where there's anticipated some growth over the next 20 or 30 years as well. Hold on just one second. My son just walked in. Antonio, hey, I've given a presentation. Can you give me 5 minutes? Thanks. So joys of being at home. So if we look to 2050 and we look at all of the traffic and transportation that we are anticipating based on the growth, what you're seeing on your screen now is, travel demand model results if we don't make any improvements to any of our corridors, right? So if we add 10,000 new people and we add 6,000 new jobs, what does that do to our system? And so, as you can see, there's a lot of red and orange roads in Murray. And a lot of this is due to the fact that we are carrying traffic that is near capacity on many of the corridors, right? And so if we add just even a little bit more, it kind of pushes us into that E and F range on several of the roads in the community. And so this obviously would be a lot of congestion, especially in the PM peak. In fact, you might even describe it as kind of like chronic congestion. So this is not a future that we want for Murray. And so a lot of the work that we did with Chris and Trey and the whole team is to work through coming up with projects that we need to avoid that as a future. And so we developed, I think, 61 total projects in our 3 phases, right? So each are 10-year phases. And these phases align with Wasatch Front's 2050 RDP as well. So we're using kind of the same phasing that they do. 61 projects might seem like a lot, but one of the things that we absolutely included were alternative mode projects. We specifically, when we heard from the public, we got a lot of comments about areas that we needed to accommodate bicyclists a little bit better, or look at bike lanes, as well as looking at sidewalk improvements and intersection improvements. And so all of those types are included in here. In fact, several of these projects, and that's what I'm showing you now, are kind of projects by type, include multiple projects. So we might like restrict the road, but in doing that, we want to make sure that we are adding bike lanes and repairing some sidewalks or some missing pieces. And so several of these of our projects have multiple types. Intersections, again, something that can be critical for a lot of the junctions. Again, something that we heard a decent amount from the public. So we've identified several areas that might need traffic signals in the future, including things like 48 South and Atwood and like College Drive and Murray Boulevard. And so there's several of these places that we didn't overlook the fact that some of our junctions and intersections are going to need improvements. And then, of course, we spent a lot of time to make sure that we can truly understand what would be needed in terms of widening and restriping and what we need to do to accommodate traffic into the future. And so we have developed kind of we've updated the functional class plan a little bit to make sure that we are planning for and accommodating appropriate roads into the future. And so several of our corridors we have updated with a future functional class map where we plan on upgrading them, moving them. You'll notice like 700 West Murray Boulevard transitions from a collector to a minor arterial into the future. And there's a couple of those type of corridors. And then if we can build a lot of the projects that I just showed you, then this is the type of future that we can anticipate, that if we can, plan for and get many of these projects built, then you will get back to a level of service and a quality of life really in Murray that where we can accommodate the traffic that we need. And you'll notice that there's a lot less red on this map than there was on the previous. We've done a lot to accommodate the growth, and we can kind of get back to a lot more green and yellow corridors in terms of the amount of congestion and delay. We worked really closely with the engineering department to dial in the projects and even their phasing. We asked the public specifically about projects and phasing as well, and reviewed all their comments. We also spent time looking at costs and thinking of funding and funding sources. And so these are the phase one projects. These are the ones that are perhaps the most critical. There are 17 of them. You can see the dollar amounts at the bottom, about 41 million total cost and 22 million that would probably be the responsibility of the city. And you can see kind of how those individual projects kind of break down. I will tell you, perhaps the most impactful or the most costly one is project number 3. It's a widening on Murray Boulevard. Again, a lot of this is due to the new growth in the area, behind College Drive, not just the Galleria apartments, but we're adding new commercial and other developments there that really kind of make it necessary that we have a 5-lane corridor through there, and that's not a state route. And so, that the funding of that, falls kind of entirely in the city's lap. The next 2 phases, you'll notice, have this is phase 2 here, our blue phase, if you will, have more projects but fewer dollars. Like if you look at the responsibility for Murray, it's $14 million. Many of the projects here, and you can see the project type column, are things like adding some sidewalk, doing those traffic signals, cleaning up some of the intersections, restriping with some bike lanes. A lot of these are important projects that can help improve traffic flow throughout the community, but maybe are just a little bit less. They're not in the tens of millions or even the millions of dollars on a lot of these. There's a real opportunity to do a lot of these projects that can improve transportation at the community without breaking the bank, as it were, in phase 2. And phase 3 is also a little bit of a lighter phase. As we get kind of further out, some of the needs the community are going to have are, we have some intersection improvements, that we'll need as growth occurs, but there's a lot of other type of bike lanes and add sidewalks and a hawk signal and those type of things that can help improve the quality of life to your residents that are traveling around, but maybe aren't huge dollar amounts. And so you'll notice that phase 3 is again in about the $10 million range. We vetted these and spent a lot of time working with Chris and Trey on the actual projects. I wanted to put these 2 maps kind of side by side so you can see, a 2050 no build map where if we don't make any improvements on the left, the amount of congestion and some of the traffic volumes that we'll have, versus on the map on the right where if we build, these projects that we're looking at, the type of the level of really fluidity, right? The amount of congestion that we can avoid. And the way that we can kind of accommodate the volumes that we're looking at and anticipating into the future. Maybe a couple of final takeaways that much of our anticipated growth, the growth in Murray, is kind of near I-15, right? We've talked a little bit about, or at least I've mentioned, the Galleria apartments and some of the other developments off of like the interchange by 45th. And those type of things. And so because of that, we think that vehicle traffic and congestion is going to grow, and it's going to grow faster than population or employment. And again, part of that is because, we're so close. Many of our roads are operating near level of service D capacities today. So they're operating and they're doing okay. But if we add just a little bit more, right, a couple more developments, add just, that additional traffic will be enough. It can be the to push it over the edge so that, we have a lot more congestion. And then, we've thought of and incorporated a lot of active transportation and roadway projects for the benefit of Murray. And we've tested a lot of these out with the regional travel demand model. And if we can build these planned projects that, we believe that, the residents, will have a similar quality of life in the future that they do today. So a lot of these projects really are pretty critical to being able to maintain good traffic flow through the city. I realize it's late. I did want to just mention one other thing. So we did do a lot of public outreach. In fact, we had over 400 residents complete a survey last summer, and we asked them a lot of kind of great questions that help shape the plan. And one of the questions that we asked is on your screen. We asked them, we gave them this kind of drawing of different roadway elements, right? Sidewalks, park strips, bike lanes, buffers, travel lanes, a throughway turn lane, parking, or trails. And we asked them, to rank their top 5 elements of importance on the corridor. Basically, if you're going to pick, design a road from scratch, what elements do you want on that road? And then, and the graph on the bottom is their average ranking, which, obviously 1 is the best. You ranked it number 1, it's the top, right? And so if you look at this, the number 1, ranked item is sidewalks. People really wanted sidewalks, right? The residents in Murray were like, give me sidewalks over anything. And then second is travel lane. And number 3 is bike lanes. And specifically, bike lanes were ranked a lot higher than parking. Maybe not that much higher than, say, like a 2-way center turn lane, right? Which can be pretty important, but it was more than parking. And so a lot of the things that we included in the transportation plan address traveling, like travel lanes, but also we incorporated a decent amount of, bike lanes and sidewalk projects and those type of things because, your residents really kind of want to see them. Trey, how'd I do? Are we pretty good? I would love to answer any questions anybody has.
Thomas, you did great. And, Thomas is here to answer questions. Both me and Chris are here to answer questions. So anything you have, we'll give it a shot. So if you need a break, we're more than happy to hang tight for 5 or 10 minutes. If you need more than happy if you want to take a break. You've been in a very long meeting.
Yeah, it's a long meeting.
I'll ask you a question, Thomas. So at the regional level, we look for regional continuity. Have a lot of that in Murray with freeways, both north, south, east, west, and the transit, light rail, commuter rail, and the BRT systems that are on the way. How much did you coordinate with the other cities around Murray? What do we have? We have Mill Creek to the north and Holiday, Cottonwood Heights to the east and south, Midvale, Taylorsville. So to get that really good flow, it's nice to be able to see, oh yeah, the road comes through Murray right into Taylorsville, and you're not just pushing to the city border and then you just move the issue to another city.
Yeah, Ned, that is a great question. So by the way, we absolutely, start by looking at the RTP and taking a look at the projects that Wasatch Front Regional Council is planning for Murray. You might be surprised to know that there are no capacity projects in Murray City in the regional RTP. They have, I think, a total of either 6 or maybe 8, and they're all operational improvements. So say like State Street operational improvements, which are just like, signal kind of coordination and improvement. So we absolutely, took a look at that and want to coordinate with Wasatch Front. The short answer is that we actually did quite a bit of coordination among the different cities. And part of that was that during the same time that we were doing the transportation plan here with Murray, we're also collectively, all of us kind of working on a regional active transportation plan. So we regularly had meetings with a 6-city group that included Taylorsville, Cottonwood Heights, Midvale, Murray, Holiday, Mill Creek. I feel like I'm missing one, but kind of that group. And so, for example, 48 South that you see on your screen here, Project 10, goes directly into Taylorsville, and then it goes and dead ends at Redwood Road. Well, we have coordinated with Mark McGrath and others at Taylorsville City about that. In fact, as part of the other project, we even looked at a design that might work. And so here in Murray, the plan for Project 10 is really to restripe it to 3 lanes. We'd love to be able to accommodate bike lanes as well, which probably means there's not going to be any on-street parking allowed, right? On this section, but we've looked at how that functions regionally and how it ties into Taylorsville, and Mark has a plan for their corridor. Their section is mostly already 3 lanes anyway, and so it correlates pretty well. There are any instances where we needed to look across borders. We did our best to try to do that.
I'd like to ask a question. For those that don't speak trafficese, when you say add 2 or 3 lanes, is that 2 in each direction or a total of 2 or a total of 3?
Sure, yeah. So we always talk in totals. And so if you see here, like Project 3 says widen 3 to 5 lanes. So what it means is we're 3 lanes today, we're going to 5. So we're going to add an additional lane in each direction. And like I just described, Project 10, that's restriping what is a 2-lane section. So right now we just have a center stripe and like 1 lane in each direction. We want to just restripe that to add a left turn, a turn lane in the middle, and then 1 lane in each direction. So that's from 2 today to 3 in the future.
Thanks for that clarification. That's so much, it's clear now that you've said that. Feasibility, just for the understand feasibility, meaning, is this pie in the sky? We really have to get a lot of grants, and a lot of everybody in the community would have to 100% agree, or is this pretty solid and we think we can do all of this and guarantee that we're going to get the money we need? Where are we? Or somewhere right in between, right?
That's really probably a question for Trey. Trey, do you want to answer that?
I think it's a great question, and you're looking at some big numbers here. Obviously, in 10 years, we may not get to all of these projects, similar to sort of my review of the other projects. There'll have to be some priorities set, and there may be other priorities that do pop up, as we move forward. But we tried to make these manageable. We definitely looked at them and said there's projects here that qualify for federal funds, and there's some great projects here that I know we can get funded through Wasatch Front, and there's probably also some opportunities for some bonding and some other things. So I feel fairly confident that we'll be able to make these Phase 1 improvements. I can tell you right now that we've already started on several of these projects. They're already if they're not being constructed right now, they will be in a month. So that's how much progress we've made. Several of these will be under construction, and one of them's actually almost done. 4800 South, that's already been repaved and striped to 3 lanes. The next step will be bike lanes, and we're looking at that really hard here in the next probably year or 2.
I have a question.
Yeah, I guess if I was going to add, I've done transportation plans for a lot of cities, and lots of cities are dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars of needs. That has been true for, like, I did Payson's plan, and they were about $400 million, and I did Saratoga's plan 2 years ago, and they need almost $1 billion. And so Murray's need is somewhere in the neighborhood of, like 60 million. That seems so much more reasonable than some of these other cities that are really going through true growing pains. And so, yeah, I mean, honestly, and Trey is right with a lot of these, like some of these large dollar amounts, there are real opportunities to work with Wasatch Front and other funding partners to identify, grants where you just have to come up with local matches and some of those type of things.
I have to say, I really appreciate you saying that. I just feel like consistently the public's complaining about traffic, and we it's great to hear that it might be really feasible that we can control it.
Hey, speaking of traffic, can we go to the no build comparison map?
Yeah.
Okay, so when we look at this, obviously there's some stark differences in the two. Are there areas of the city that you feel will struggle or not be able to accommodate large-scale mixed-use projects based on what we're seeing here?
Well, sure, yeah. I mean, we've spent a lot of time, looking at Murray Boulevard, that 700 West to 500 West area, especially north of 53rd, between 45 and 53rd, right? where, there's, several different types of things kind of going on, but most notably perhaps the Galleria apartments. And so that's something that we've spent a lot of time looking at, and we modeled multiple scenarios of how much, density or number of units that they're going to have and what that would mean for the traffic impact on not just that corridor, but also like the Vine Street and 48th kind of, north of that. And so, that's an area that's probably a little bit, under the capacity of what it needs to be into the future. And so that's why, that like those corridors, 48th and Murray Boulevard are critical, and probably critical in phase one. We can't delay, push those off too far. Especially with, some growth or growth, that type of growth coming. Winchester might be another one where, we spend a lot of time looking at it. We ultimately, don't have a widening project on Winchester, but so you see it's kind of like, it's orange today and it's kind of orange in the future. And so, that's a corridor that, if there was a big development coming or some sort of big redevelopment, or they put a big, TOD maybe by, the track station down there, then that would potentially be problematic. But as of right now, something that big or whatever isn't coming. And so we think Winchester's going to be okay.
And you're mostly discussing Winchester at the west side of the city, not the east side of the city.
Yes, that's true. You're right. I should point out, it's just the west side, like, west of state.
I just had a maybe a question and observation. So on page 16, on page 16, it looks like we have 42,000 people coming in to work and 23,000 leaving. So that's a lot of daily trips that are happening. That doesn't include people going to the grocery store or whatever else. And then if I flip to page 29, we're looking at public transportation, and the totals over here on our light rail and commuter rail are by month. At least that's what it says. And I mean, this is like a drop in the bucket. It's almost nothing to offset this transportation. So even if we were able to double or triple the amount of people using light rail and commuter rail and even bus, if we compare that to the bus, how many people are taking the bus, it doesn't make a difference at all. At least it looks like it to me. Mm-hmm. I mean, is that true, or am I missing something there?
Nope. No, you're absolutely looking at the right thing, and that really is pretty true. Here in Utah, if you look at our commute traffic and how many of us, commute to work, either walking, biking, taking transit, it's very low percentages. I mean, it's low percentages across the whole Wasatch Front. Ultimately, if we transit isn't gonna solve isn't gonna be a silver bullet for traffic problems in the future. And the percent of folks that commute on transit, even if it goes up from say like 5% of commuters to say 8 or 10% of commuters, you're right. It's still a relatively small percent of folks that take transit to work.
Okay. Yeah, the math I did right now is we're like less than 1% are riding rail. If we combine bus, we would be about 1.5. So even if we doubled that or tripled it, I mean, it's going to almost make no difference. So it's just not.
Well, it's probably a lot closer to 1 to 1.5% than it is 0.1, right? So if you look at, our Central Station and Passion Place are getting about 5,000, daily, weekday, boardings or so of the like 50,000, inflow commuters and stuff like that. It's probably closer to 1% than 0.1, but ultimately, it's relatively small percent.
But can I expand on that idea?
Let me answer Jake's question a little bit farther. So part of this issue, Jake, is across the region. And the challenge across the region is getting people to and from the last mile of their trip. So Murray is so fortunate to have 3 light rail stations and a commuter rail station, platform to platform, with light rail. But you've got to get from those stations to the other parts of the city. And unless you ride your bike, you can't get there. So this first last mile that UTA probably heard about that, but UTA talks about is so critical to getting more people to use transit. And part of that first last mile, I think Murray has done a really good job with this plan in particular, is getting more bike and ped connections to and from those stations, so people have more opportunity to use the train, both from the city, going out of the city, and from people who are commuting into Murray to get to a train station and then to get to their final destination employment site. So it's a super challenge. Adding more highway lanes is pretty much not going to happen anymore. Maybe do some new managed lanes on the freeway. In other words, you pay more or you wait to get on the freeway, but the freeway isn't going to get a lot more attention. A few of the roads like Thomas and Trey have been talking about, they'll get improved in Murray, but these charts that we're looking at here, yeah, they're a little bit scary, and the desire is absolutely to get more people on transit. And that's the significant challenge. UTA, the West Side Front Regional Council, and lots of others are trying to figure out exactly how to do that.
Mr. Hacker, that's the question I was going to ask, because Mr. Pearson's comment that it wouldn't make a difference was intriguing to me, meaning we can't make enough effect, or, I think anything can make a difference, even if it's 2%, but hopefully we get 10, 20% more participation. But that was going to be my question. Is it so low just because of our lifestyles and what we believe and what we do? Or is it so low because the system's not functioning correctly?
It's the lifestyle, Lisa.
Can I jump in and say part of it's opportunity? We have not, as a region, built the infrastructure at those stations to give people, put a couple of thousand people within a mile of a station. Yeah. And all of a sudden their opportunity exists to ride that transit. We haven't done that part yet, but it's coming, because your carrying capacity of these roads, like Ned is saying, you're going to hit it in 15 or 20 years. And the only solution will be to not be in gridlock, because all of the improvements you can make, eventually all of Thomas's models that show the build and no build will look the same, because there's nothing left to build at some point, until you're taking people's property to turn 4800 South into 5 lanes instead of 3 lanes or 6 lanes or whatever. And the carrying capacity of those extra lanes will pale in comparison to what we've built next to the stations at that point, if we've all done our jobs right. Yeah, and I'll be dead by then, but we have to get on that path now. And so that's why we push the mixed use stuff as hard as we do.
Yeah, and if you look around, just let's say the hospital, and you look at traffic around that area, it's busy all the time, but there are, probably 1,000 employees that take the train. And that's 1,000 less cars driving around, because most of these cars have a single person in them. So, in small areas, it can make a huge difference. And
just so I'm clear, I'm not saying we shouldn't try to do mass transit. I'm just saying that based on these numbers, even if we double it or triple it, we're not going to get anywhere close to alleviating this issue.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and that's why the master transportation plan looks like it does. Why it has so much road improvement in it, and why the infrastructure money we spend will be a lot of that. Because right now we have land use things we can do to try to help increase the ridership on transit, but we are still going to need, for the next generation, more road improvements as well. You're right on.
That's all I had. I just thought it was well put together, easy to read, and I appreciate it.
If I may expand on what Jared was just saying and the comments previously, I think it's important to note that as we look through to 2050 with this plan, we are increasing the nodes, as Commissioner Hacker had said. We're increasing the pedestrian access, increasing the bike access. As congestion comes into the valley, which is inevitable, commuting by vehicle will be less convenient and transit ridership will probably go up. And by creating the nodes and the projects that we've identified, we can help prepare Murray for that future where cars may not be always top dog.
While saying that, Planning Commission or staff, could we attach a link to this study every time there's an item that has traffic concerns
Yes.
in the future?
Absolutely. This is a really great and it's a really great opportunity for the Planning Commission to get more versed in transportation stuff. We see traffic impact studies and we get Trey's comments on those, and we look at this stuff all the time, but it's really great to see it holistically like this sometimes. And for this new plan to be in place and for us to be able to reference it, and spoiler alert, we've already done that. We use this functional classification mapping in one of our staff reports. We probably stole your intellectual property, Thomas, but we did that recently. So it's great for us to have this for planning and zoning. You bet.
Since I like to make waves, notice Bullion Street, whether we did anything or not, it stays
exactly
functional.
You bring up a really good point. You look at the traffic today on Bullion Street and you look at it in 2050, and there's not much of a difference. There really isn't. Today we're about 1,800 vehicles a day. In 2050 goes to about 2,000. There's not that big of an increase on Bullion Street.
I could build some stuff there.
That's because it's going to be built out here, right? One more project.
I could recommend some more projects there if you want, Trey.
There's not room for any more. Unlike the Galleria area or the MCCD area where there's a fair amount of growth. That's where we're gonna see the growth. That's where we're gonna see the density, and that's where we're gonna see a lot of the traffic and issues and need to focus on improvements.
Yeah, I notice if you look at State Street in this map here, State Street doesn't really change much, but yeah, we do have a couple of large areas that really could turn over and create some significant housing changes to that area.
But State Street also has better access to transit.
Right.
So you're going to see that alleviating.
Right.
You don't see the numbers yet, but you'll see those numbers will get absorbed.
Yeah.
Some of those numbers will get absorbed by the transit opportunities on State Street as opposed to other places.
At least dozens of people.
At least dozens.
All right.
And Jared's right, but there's also excess capacity on State, right? So State Street, today is like 35,000, 37,000 cars a day, but it's got the capacity of 50. So we could add 10,000 cars a day to State Street and it's still going to function just fine.
And I think 9th East is very similar too, correct?
Yeah, it's right. It's in the same boat. Yeah.
That's where we're going to see. I think some of this mixed use is on 9th East and State Street. So not going to be as big of an impact as say on Murray Boulevard or 7th West or Vine Street or 48th.
That's right. Yeah, they can absorb more growth and increase traffic because they've got some excess capacity where you don't have that on Murray Boulevard.
Yep.
I think
You guys did a great job.
Yep, it's been very helpful.
Thanks, Ned.
Thanks, Ned. I think the team did a fantastic job, and Thomas has been great to work with. And I guess with that, we're going to ask the Planning Commission to review the draft plan and forward the City Council a recommendation of approval to adopt the transportation plan by resolution. So that's what we're here asking for, so that we can take the next step and get this thing adopted and continue to move forward and build projects.
As soon as the chairwoman allows us to do that, I'll make that motion.
Go for it, Ned.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, Madam Chairman, I would like to make a motion that the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council adopt the Murray City 2021 Transportation Master Plan by resolution.
Is there a second on that motion? Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Hacker and a second by Commissioner Malkovich to forward a recommendation to the City Council to adopt the resolution of the 2021 Master Transportation Plan, or Transportation Master Plan. So, any discussion? No? We can take a vote.
Commissioner Hacker,
Yes.
Commissioner Malkovich,
Yes.
Commissioner Ney,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson,
Yes.
and Chair Patterson.
Yes. Okay, well, that was unanimous, so that will go on to the City Council. Thank you so much for that presentation and for being here tonight and for wading through all of the other agenda items. It was very well done and super interesting. So we're grateful for that presentation tonight.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
We invoke the city engineer a lot. It's nice to have him here live.
Yeah.
It's true.
I was ready to step in a couple of times, but you guys read my mind and said exactly what I was going to say. So you took care of it.
Oh, good to know. Okay. Is there any other business for the commission this evening?
I don't believe that we really do. We're just working on a bunch of stuff to bring to you and take up your nights this spring. So
When does our moratorium expire?
August 1st. Thanks for
Deadline.
I'm not doing all of these projects. Zach and Susan are really stepping up and taking care of things so I can write and draft and worry and read.
He's just holed up in the office all day, every day with the door shut. And
I get up and walk around to avoid blood clots once in a while, but that's about it. But the moratorium ends August 1st. What that means is that you will all see the drafts for the things that we're going to be proposing during June. So coming up.
Okay.
Big
so
things.
We'll be looking for you to really plow through some heavy duty reading. It's really not as complicated as all that. It's kind of fun to talk about and explain what we're working on writing. I think you're going to love it.
Is Bryant loving it?
Oh, not yet.
Okay.
We'll have to fix a lot of my mistakes after. But if we try to keep on track, then that's the hope, that we stay on track to finish the new codes before moratorium ends. We need to be at the City Council during July, so we need to be with you guys in June. And I want you to have a couple of cracks at it, a work session in the beginning of June. So it'll be on your agenda as a working item at the end of the meeting to talk about for a while. For that first meeting in June, which is June 3rd, thank you, June 3rd. And then for June 17th, I'm going to hope for a recommendation on City Council so I can get them taken care of in July and beat that moratorium. The City Council's first meeting in August is on August 3rd, 48 hours after we expire. So I have to finish it early instead of at the deadline. So I feel a little cheated, but what? So you should see it in June. So we'll send it to you as soon as we can and present.
That's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
So exciting. Okay.
Susan wanted me to ask if you guys know of any vacations coming up or anything, so we know what's what.
Just let us know.
Yeah, just let us know.
Allowed to do that yet?
Yeah, you can. Go for it.
Wait a second.
I have to say, I appreciate you guys being heard about bullying. I was stressed about it. I'm still stressed about it.
It's coming up for council soon. Bully on Streets, that reason will be at council for their committee of the whole in their next meeting.
Yep.
So.
At the very least, your lightheartedness makes me feel better, and also maybe redirect someone's anger toward me.
Yeah.
No problem.
Okay. Yeah. So just let us know if you guys have any time or anything coming up.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn at 9 p.m.
Whoa. Is there a second?
Second.
Meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Good night, Sue.
We'll see you in the chamber next time.
Yeah.
Great.